5. So this morning we are coming in on a day that everybody's kind of buzzing about. The president is in town. The president's in town. Gauteng and Joburg. Apparently we've never seen the president before. So I know that that's going to be a big topic around the country today. But I wanted to talk today about something I was triggered with yesterday. We had Sihle Lonzi, an MP from the EFF, on the show yesterday, and he was talking about students and student debt. And they put forward a bill in Parliament that asks the state to subsidize when a student can't afford it. And I don't want to kind of rehash that story, but it did make me think about the role of parliamentarians. So in the 30 years or so that we've had a democracy, the majority of the bills that we've seen, the legislation, the new laws that we've seen passed, have been what we call executive member bills. This means that either the president or a member of his cabinet, one of the ministers, will put together a bill. Parliament will kind of workshop that bill. And particularly when we still had a majority government, in an ANC-led government, Luthuli House would get involved and so on. And that bill will be brought from cabinet to Parliament as an executive member's bill. Parliament then processes it for constitutionality, for rationality, and many times doesn't process it very much because, again, in the past we had a stacked majority Parliament in favor of the ANC at the time, and so you would just assume that the bill is going to go through. And what we haven't seen much of is what this bill that the EFF is bringing forward is, which is a private member's bill, which means that any MP of the 400 MPs that we have can actually put forward a bill, a piece of legislation and a law. And that is actually part of their job. An MP is a lawmaker. An MP is not just somebody who shows up to debate or to say point of order or to fill up the hall when the president speaks and asks questions. MPs are there as lawmakers. And so you would expect that more parties would be, talking amongst themselves and figuring out how do we use this space of Parliament to actually generate laws, not just rubber stamp laws. And there are other functions that MPs have, but I don't think many of us actually know what MPs do. And this is not just about MPs. MPs, members of provincial legislatures, MPLs, and councillors have actual roles and responsibilities. They are our representatives, and they're supposed to be doing work. I want you to think about this. Besides cabinet members, right, ministers who are also members of Parliament, off the top of your head, can you name 10 MPs in Parliament and tell me which portfolio committees they're in? Just think about it. Do you know what your MPs do? Another thing that's interesting to me is that MPs have what we call constituency days. So we know that our system is one of parties and the MPs represent the party. So we always think about that. But every MP is allocated by their party a geographic community in South Africa that they represent. So when they talk about having constituency days, they're actually supposed to be going to your community. So, Levs, where do you stay? Okay, don't tell everyone your actual neighborhood.
I'll stay in Fourways.
Oh, okay. You don't.
That's big, yeah.
So there are at least 10, 12, 13 MPs in Parliament from different parties who have been told that Fourways is their constituency.
Okay, they have to be coming through and checking if everything is operational. They're just doing oversight in the neighborhood.
And we pay them for constituency days, and they have constituency offices in different parts. They're actually offices that are paid for, that are physical buildings. And they're supposed to be going to those offices and engaging with us, their constituents. This is, every party has those. So we are underutilizing our MPs as our voice. You're supposed to have the name and the number and the email address of an MP and say to them, next week there's a bill coming into Parliament. The budget is happening next week. How are you going to be voting when the health budget comes up? When we're talking about this student bill, what is your view on it and how are you going to vote? We should be able to do that. We're going to be talking later in the show about the US. And one of the things I noticed when I was in the US a few years ago is you would actually have civil society representatives going to their Congress when there's big voting days and asking their Congress people one-on-one, how are you going to vote on issue 1, 2, and 3?
And how does this cover the interest that we have as a community? How is it that you are representing us? How is this going to be beneficial to us? And it actually makes sense, right? Like, because so many of us just thought that parliamentarians are just these actors that just go, the only line on the script that you just need to remember is on a point of order, Chair. And that's it.
Absolutely. It's the people's parliament. And so the people who are in parliament, the people who are in legislatures and councillors are actually the ones that are supposed to be doing the thing that the president's about to do for the next 2 days. Oversight visits is the responsibility of parliamentarians, MPLs and councillors. And why is that important? Because their job is accountability as well. So we think about parliamentarians, MPLs and councillors as the junior politicians of our state machinery. I've started to think about them differently since last year in the election, because they are actually the ones that hire and fire the president, the premier, and the mayor. Yeah. You don't have a president, a premier, or a mayor without MPs voting for them.
Yeah.
And we've seen in the city of Joburg that MPs can recall them. They can vote against them. They can pull them out. And the same is true for the president.
So they're actually the most important people in those cities.
They are such powerful people with powerful jobs, and yet what we're seeing them do is play Candy Crush. So I want to start holding them.
On a point of order, Chair. On a point of order, you have to withdraw that.
I've seen too much Candy Crush, Chief. And as a Candy Crusher myself, I understand the addiction, but not on my dime, not on my time. And I do think we need to start holding them more accountable for their work, know what their work is, know what their names are, use them more often, more effectively. And on this show, we're going to be speaking particularly to councillors. I want councillors to stop being people who say, oh, I also just found out like you. I want them to start doing their jobs, because part of the reason our cities are falling apart is because we don't have councillors who are fighting for us in those council chambers and making sure our mayors and those excos do what they're supposed to do.
I have a funny story when you're talking about councillors. So a friend of mine had thrown a 50th birthday for his uncle, right? So we're there, but electricity has been out in the neighborhood for about 5 days or so. So guess who's sitting there having drinks with everyone? The ward councillor. There hasn't been electricity for 5 days in the community that you are serving, and you are sitting there with people at a birthday party, and you're like, namangazi, what am I gonna do, brother?
Well, in today's show, we're going to be talking to a whole lot of MPs today, particularly. But like I said, on the show, I want us to talk to more councillors as we go along. But we also want to talk to you at home. And so if you have a comment, a thought, if you want to tell us about what you think about your MPs, your councillors, your MPLs, or anything else on the show, remember the studio line is 0861 987 000. You can hashtag Power Breakfast on all social media platforms. We'll be able to catch you there. And we're going to be trying to read more of the Twitter and Facebook comments that you share. At PowerFM987 is how you get a hold of us on Twitter. Facebook is PowerFM. And our WhatsApp line for your 30-second voice notes is 083 303 7093. In Johannesburg and Pretoria, you can get us on 987. In Johannesburg West and Johannesburg South, it's 103.6. For the Enachang, 104.4. East Rand and Ekurhuleni, 107.2. DSTV, channel 889, and then streaming powerfm.co.za. And you can also see our video stream today on our social media platforms. There'll be a link. And now for the traffic.
Power traffic.
Just as I was just thinking of pivoting and becoming a politician, Tessa wants me to do a lot of work. I just thought that point of order is all I needed to know. I get a 1.3 million rands a year, and I'm good to go. That's what I thought.
Especially because we pay them that much, they must work.
I thought I was just going to be a backbencher there, and so, my man, I'm just going to relax, rise up now and again. But now you want us to work. I have to be stuck with the radio. Let's check out what's happening in your roads. We start off in Diepkloof. If you're traveling on Chris Hani Road eastbound, there's queuing traffic to expect as you're traveling past the University of Johannesburg, heading towards the Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital. On the Golden Highway northbound, as you're traveling out of Aldos, there's queuing traffic you'll bump into between Union Avenue and the East Street intersection. That's in Devland. If you're traveling on the M1 northbound, a usual pressure can be expected approaching the double-decker section. Several traffic lights are out around the city of Johannesburg this morning. If you're traveling on Beas Nodier Drive in Rand Park Ridge, those traffic lights are out at Molope, CR Swart, as well as Easter Road Drive. Traffic lights also out in Honeydew at John Foster and Christian Devet Road. If you're traveling on Malibongwe Drive in Kaya Sand, those traffic lights are out at the South Africa Drive intersection. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebohang Pukela.
Traffic.
Midnight Oil has a very distinct smell for business owners. Those who know will say it's got grit and graft. That's why Telkom Business wants to unleash the hero in you with the Business Fusion deal. Get a Packard Bell Montenero laptop, LTE 120 gigs anytime data, 120 gigs night surfer data, Smart Voice Basic, plus a professional website for only 749 Rand per month. Call 10213, click telkom.co.za or go to any Telkom shop. TNC apply. Telkom. Possible begins here.
You're listening to Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms.
So this morning we're going to be covering an international relations story. Donald Trump, the president of the United States, newly minted, feels like he's been in office for a long, long time, has had a setback in the way that he is moving in terms of the foreign aid. So we know that USAID and other foreign aid has been summarily suspended, but there is some pushback. And maybe it's because President Trump doesn't always do the right things or know what it is that he's doing. Evidenced by a clip that he had about Lesotho, apparently.
$8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples.
Lesotho, who nobody's ever heard of. President Trump is signing executive orders on really, really important things. I think Elon Musk last week in a meeting of the U.S. cabinet said that they had accidentally stopped Ebola funding and then had to pull it back. So there's definitely missteps there, and we want to just talk about some of the pushback that is coming through here. So we have today on the line with us Johanna LeBlanc. She's a foreign policy and national security professional, and she'll be talking us through the fact that the Supreme Court, on a 5-4 decision, the highest court in the land in the U.S., has pushed back on President Trump and said to him that he has to pay some of the foreign aid, especially the USAID money that was already promised and has already been actually used by some of the organizations in Africa and other places. Johanna, welcome to Power Breakfast.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Thank you so much for having me, Tessa.
Thank you so much, Johanna. I'm assuming you're joining us probably snugly in your bed, given the time of day in the U.S. But just tell us a little bit more about the Supreme Court judgment. President Trump would have come in thinking he's quite comfortable with the Supreme Court stacked 6-3 in his favor. What is the backlash on this judgment?
Sure. So the Supreme Court's ruling essentially make sure that contractors, USAID contractors in particular, who provide critical services like healthcare and humanitarian aid in countries like Ukraine, Georgia, Nigeria, actually receive payment for past work, right? So this is about work that's already being done, and folks want to get paid for that work. So that's the only area that this Supreme Court ruling actually covers for now. But all of the other policies that are in place to stop the continuation of providing aid to these various countries, as of right now, the court has not ruled on any of those matters, and the decision is permanent, at least for now.
I mean, there seems to be many of these decisions and executive orders since President Trump has come in that have been taken into the court system. And so there have been wins and losses. But this seems to be quite an important win, just given the quantum that we're talking about. This is no small figure. This is $2 billion in aid. And what I think is important about it is he's not necessarily always thinking about whether this is practical. And this is about work that's already been done. This is not about future projects. It's not about countries nobody knows about. This is about commitments that the USA has already made, work that's already been done, projects that have been executed on. How is it that such a oversight has been made by the White House or is this, them trying to be intentionally nefarious in not wanting to pay what has already been work done?
I think that the president ran a campaign on draining the swamp here in Washington, meaning that he would have cut back on a lot of these agencies and ultimately dismantling some of them, in particular agencies such as USAID. But one thing I will say is that the ruling does not necessarily resolve the broader conflict over Trump's foreign aid cuts, because we're talking about over $60 billion in grants and contracts that have been terminated at USAID and State Department, right? And we're talking about more than 10,000 people have been fired from their position. So President Trump's decision will have lasting impact on people's careers. And we're talking about, Tessa, people who actually have jobs in the development world. Yeah. That sector is completely decimated, doesn't exist anymore in the United States.
I think the day that I saw the USAID website no longer existed, I realized just how severe this is. But maybe just to ask about the response to this, because again, the response has been litigious. It's been about going to the courts. And maybe for the benefit of South African listeners, let's think about the role of Congress here. I was just speaking a few minutes ago about the role of our parliament and parliamentarians. But do Congress have any recourse of their own? You know, do senators, do House representatives have recourse, or is it only the courts that can intervene when there are executive orders? Because it does seem like a very big amount of power sits in those executive orders without a lot of checks and balances from Congress. Does Congress have a role to play here, or are they just flat-footed, thousands of them flat-footed and just watching this unfold?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things I used to be a senior staffer at the U.S. Congress, so I know this quite well. One of the things that is different from past presidency here in this country is that Mr. Trump has been putting a lot of his policies in place through executive actions, meaning that he has been bypassing the legislative branch, right, in order to get some of these things done in a very fast manner. So what's been happening is that institutions that are harmed by his decisions and trade unions and other types of unions and individuals have been suing the administration to get some sort of relief. But the problem is that the courts typically take a very long time to provide ruling on some of these matters. And it's very strategic, right, because the courts have to take these issues, they have to look at the holistic approach, right, and they have to analyze these issues from all angles, right, and really look at the case law, what the case law says. And in some cases, we're talking about issues of first impression that the courts never dealt with, right? So by the time the court issues a ruling on a matter, Mr. Trump has already gone on to the next issue, right? Because he is moving at an incredibly rapid speed. So what the Congress can do, that, which is the Democratic Party, and that is the opposition party that is in place right now, is to mobilize, right, and to be vocal and to ensure that the people truly understand what's at stake. But as you said earlier, what role does Congress play beyond being the opposition party? Well, Congress has the power of the purse, right? But the problem with that is that the Republicans have the majority in the House and in the Senate. So there are a lot of policies that could be passed Congress just with the Republicans' vote, because the Republicans are running the House by a very slim majority. But when it comes to passing bills, like the budget bill that it just passed recently, all of them voted in favor of it, and no Democrat voted. And ultimately, the bill was passed. So that's the problem, right? You have an executive branch, right, and then you have the House that is run by Republicans and the Senate that is run by Republicans, and you have a conservative Supreme Court. Yes, we've gotten this win, but it does not mean that other issues that will go before the Supreme Court will actually prevail in the way that the American people would anticipate.
Yes, what's curious for me then, especially considering you're right, the Republicans ran the House and the Senate. Why is President Trump acting on executive orders with such force and not using the fact that the Republicans have these two House advantages? Is it that he doesn't trust the process? Is it going too slowly for him? And maybe just to ask one more question, are all Republicans on board with President Trump and his agenda, especially given the presence of Elon Musk and this Doge unit? is it not usurping their power, and will they not run risks with this? I mean, I was watching in the last few weeks, seeing Republicans going to their town halls and having to go and face their constituents and facing real serious backlash. Is it possible that the Republicans might turn on the Trump presidency?
Yes, and one thing just before I respond, and I want to make it very clear that Congress has the power of the purse. That is a right that is enshrined in our Constitution. Period. Right. So this means the president cannot unilaterally redirect or withhold or terminate funding that Congress has already allocated, which is why this case went straight to the Supreme Court, because it was a violation of the Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution. Right. So that's that. But in terms of what you said about Republicans and some of their constituents are upset. I mean, that is indeed happening, because Mr. Trump is hoping to get rid of 2 million public workers, right, and within the federal government. So federal workers are not just in Washington or not just in Maryland or Virginia. They are across the United States. Yeah. So there are a number of members of Congress who are Republican, who are Democrat or whatnot, who their constituents are being impacted by these cuts. Yeah. And they're asking them questions about, what are you doing to defend our rights in Washington?
And as they should,
the reality is that the Republican Party, when it comes to making sure certain legislation get through, they do come together. They do mobilize, even though they run the House and the Senate by a slim majority. So it shows that Mr. Trump has a very strong hold of the Republican Party, and that whatever he wants, it will be executed. And if he believes that Congress will slow the process, because that's the problem, right? A lot of times when you're trying to get something done through Congress, it takes a lot of time. And
it's too slow for a Trump presidency speed. And I'm going to have to cut it there, because we're running into the news time. But I think this has kind of amplified the theme around just the role of Congress and how important it is that we elect people who we can trust to act on our behalf. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Johanna LeBlanc. She is a foreign policy and national security professional coming to us from the USA. Now time for news, headlines, and sport.
Thanks, Tessa. Good morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to visit the city of Johannesburg today as part of a series of engagements aimed at enhancing service delivery in the province. The provincial executive will present to the president its 5-year program, which is aligned to priorities of the 7th administration. This as the city has been grappling with various challenges, including potholes, water and electricity outages, as well as deteriorating infrastructure. Ramaphosa will deliver the opening remarks during his meeting with the Provincial Executive Committee, as well as the leadership of the Johannesburg Metro Council this morning. Police Minister Senzo Mchunu has committed to resolving the backlog in unresolved cases. His comments come as he revealed that there is a backlog of 1.9 million unresolved cases nationwide. He made the statement while answering questions in Parliament yesterday. Mchunu highlighted that the understaffing of detectives remains a major concern in addressing these cases. He adds that most staff will be hired to deal with it.
What then are we doing? I've already indicated that we have calculated and even categorized what is this 1.9 million made up of. Which cases are like 5 years old, which ones are 2 years old, and where are we on each one of those. Now, out of the whole of this of that work, we decided that we need to projectize that, meaning we need to employ people on contracts to deal with this particular backlog.
More on these and other power stories at 7 o'clock.
In power traffic, if you're traveling on the N1 southbound, traffic is backed up. Those delays are as usual from John Foster Drive heading towards the Olifantsfontein Road exit. Olifantsfontein Road eastbound already experiencing those peak time delays between the Savannah Hills Estate and the N1 highway. If you're traveling on the R55 south in Crowthorne, there's queuing traffic to expect between Olifantsfontein and the Arthur Avenue intersection. In Johannesburg North, Corpen Road eastbound is backed up already. You can expect those delays as you're traveling out of North Riding, heading towards Four Ways with that pressure clearing after Church Street.
Good morning, Mr. BBK.
See how you?
I'm good. What happened at the PSL yesterday? There was a array of things that were going on.
I'm telling you one thing, that 8 goals were scored last night in the Betway Premiership matches, and Orlando Pirates returning to winning ways when they defeated Chippa United at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium via a header by skipper Captain Upodlela Nkosinathi Sibisi. Pirates coach Jose Riviero returned to the technical bench after serving a suspension during their previous match, which saw the Buccaneers lose 2-0 to Marumo Gallants. And with this win, Pirates remain in second place on the league standings, having accumulated 39 points from 17 matches. But this is what the Spanish guitar Jose Riviero had to say after the match.
Well, first half, in my opinion, maybe with 1 or 1.5 clear chances for us. It was nice to score just before the halftime, to be honest, in a set play. Leading to the second half, I think it gave us more confidence, and I think we play a good second half in terms of controlling every scenario. We didn't have problems in any transition, solid in attack, not making so many mistakes or too many mistakes. Maybe I remember 1 or 2 crosses, but not really with direction.
And down in Durban, in Hammersdale to be exact, Golden Arrows held Mamelodi Sundowns to a 1-1 draw in Manqoba Mngcithi's first game after being dismissed by the Brazilians. With the Pirates winning and Sundowns drawing, it means that the gap between 1 and 2 drops from 18 to 16 points. Elsewhere, it ended goalless between SuperSport United and Amazulu, 1-1 between Cape Town City and TS Galaxy, and Richards Bay came from behind to beat Sekhukhune United 2-1. And moving on to the Champions League, Liverpool completed one of the biggest smash and grabs in Champions League history to come away from their last 16 first leg against Paris Saint-Germain with a victory. PSG dominated the game with 27 shots, forcing Liverpool goalkeeper Alisson to pull off 9 saves, but the hosts could not find an opener, and the Reds scored with their second shot of the night. Can you believe that? And that was in the 87th minute when second half substitutes Darwin Núñez and Harvey Elliott combined, the former supplying the latter to score for the Reds. Moving on to cricket, wow. New Zealand will meet India in the final of the ICC Champions Trophy on Sunday. And Tess,
the hearts broke across the country last night.
And this is because the Black Caps eliminated the Proteas yesterday in the semi-final with a 50-run victory. Now South Africa were beaten in that semi-final, meaning that they have now lost 5 Champions Trophy semi-finals: 2000, 2002, 2006, 2013, as well as now in 2025.
But props to Miller Magic. What a spectacular knock. 76 balls is no joke, and he did it one man. Just beautiful execution.
You know, as Gwena said when he was walking out and we were walking in, that this time around, it didn't feel like they were disgraced. They did put up a performance, and that effort by Miller, unfortunately, it was like a fruitless effort because it did not give us what we wanted.
You know, it felt the same for me with the last final that we played, where at least when the boys give it a real go, then you can feel proud of it and it doesn't feel like the C word.
We are crying, but let's find out what Rob Walter has to say about this.
I mean, it's just plain to see that it was a pretty good batting wicket. I don't think you can score 360 if it's not a good batting wicket. And yeah, so through no lack of effort, I don't think. I mean, we'd spoken about our options if it was a good wicket, which we knew it would be. And whilst, yes, we could bemoan our execution a little bit, certainly will never question the effort of the guys. And we sort of threw whatever we could at them, but unfortunately, you know, we couldn't break that partnership, which really set them up to push towards the end.
And what does Rassie have to say about Elizabeth? Elizabeth, remember him? Well, Springbok coach Rassie Erasmus is confident that Eben Elizabeth will still be able to play an important role within the team this season, despite concerns over his extended absence from action and due to the ongoing effects from concussio. The Boks' most capped player of all time recently started training at the Sharks and is expected to be available for selection once again for the Boks and the Sharks. While Erasmus has eased any worries that it could be a career-threatening issue the Lock is contending with.
Yemen must just get to that stage now where they say he's concussion free. He doesn't have any symptoms, he went through all the processes. According to what I've heard, he will be one of the players that will be available. He's not yet ready to play, but I think he's very close to getting ready to play. And just once that sheet is clean and he's concussion free, then it's back to normal again. We see him playing this year for us.
For Power Sports on Power Breakfast, BBK is my name.
Power Sports.
Hi everyone, I'm Dean McPherson, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. In the State of the Nation reply, I announced that we're releasing 31 state-owned properties for redevelopment that will generate 10 billion rand in investment and create 165,000 new jobs. These public-private partnerships will help us realize our dream to turn South Africa into a construction site. To achieve this, the department in 2025 will be leveraging reforms in infrastructure development through Infrastructure South Africa, release requests for proposals to redevelop our small harbours, which will create tens of thousands of new jobs, as well as reforming the expanded public works program to ensure it becomes a genuine stepping stone to permanent employment. We are accelerating efforts to get more cranes in the sky and more shovels in the ground. Our department is working for you and with you to build a better South Africa for the future.
Send us your voice notes on 083-303-7093.
Good morning, Power Breakfast, Tess and your team there. This is Letabo from Lotus. Yeah, Tess, I like the topic you are touching on today of the members of parliament. Those people, we don't know their roles, man. The councillors, all these members of parliament, we don't know their role. Even the president, we don't know the role of the president. I think the government must play a part here to alert the people of these members of parliament. What is their role? What should they do? What should they check? Because me now I'm 26 years old, but these members of parliament, man, I don't know their role, all of them. This is Letabo from Lotus.
The role of the MPs and the congressmen, I think for the next 4 years in the USA, the Republicans, their job in parliament will be just to laugh at stupid jokes, that Donald Trump is making, and nothing else. I think we are experiencing the making of a dictator, and one day he will slip and wake up to rubbles and ashes if you're not careful enough. Tapel Malete from Teresa Park.
We have on the line with us Tokelo from Shoshanguve. You have a comment as well on MPs.
Yes, very good morning to you. Ma'am, for me, I don't see what the MP is doing. They don't know what they're doing. Supporting Tabo from that comment. Seriously, what role are they doing? My understanding, the MPs, when during recess, when parliament recess, they must come to their constituency.
100%.
And meet with their councillors, and from there they must report back to the NCOP. But what they're doing, I've never seen one MP from Parliament to my constituency where I stay in Soshanguve. And if they're really doing their job, we shouldn't have such a problems of in our township or in our wards,
No, absolutely, Tokelo. You're spot on. When I made the realization that the constituency officers wasn't about their parties and doing party work, but was actually about us and having constituencies in our communities, that's when I really realized we've been holding MPs to a very, very low standard of work. But I think you're spot on. We need to start saying we want more from them, and maybe that's how we get them to do more. That was Tokelo from Shoshanguve. So we want to continue the story about what do our public representatives do this morning with a different public representative on our mind. The province is abuzz. Gauteng is abuzz because the president is coming to visit.
From where?
The resident of the province, hey? The number one citizen who happens to reside in
He
this very
lives
province.
in the province, but the president is coming to visit for 2 days. He's bringing a contingent of his ministers along with him. And we're told that he's going to do oversight. He's going to come and see for himself what is the state of the cities, especially the 3 big metros here, Ekurhuleni, Tshwane, and the city of Joburg. And we've had all of these issues. And the president is coming to visit. And I don't know what to make of this, because surely this is his job. Surely he should know what's happening in these cities on an ongoing basis. And so this fanfare, this rolling out of a red carpet, what is this actually about?
Yeah, I was actually trying to understand the dynamic, right? So to Mpumi's point that this is the number one resident of the city of Johannesburg. He lives just down the road from where we are right now. So how does it happen when you are coming to visit the city that you are living in? Do you have to now travel out of the city you live in so you can travel back on a state visit? How does the whole dynamic, how does the whole situation actually work out? But yeah, I just don't understand the whole dynamic to this thing.
So the president is coming with his cabinet. They are coming to look at the province that is having issues, serious issues of service delivery. We're grappling with the traffic lights that are not working. If you saw the rain for 2.5 hours yesterday, it would have given us even more presence of potholes. And it's coming at a time when the mayor of this very city of ours, which is touted as the world-class African city, is tone deaf.
And this is the same mayor who said we shouldn't expect much from him, though.
He said that. That's the one thing. But he added.
What a legend.
Just recently.
Let's give him a round of applause.
He actually said that with his chest, guys.
And then he says that they are going to be fast-tracking the fixing of potholes on roads that are going to be traveling everyone who's coming to the country for the G20. How is that? So it's only going to be for these people, and when they go back, we go back to fault setting?
I don't know if that's fair, BBK, because civil society, business, residents of Johannesburg have been calling for the president to intervene because of the decay of infrastructure in the city, right? And being a resident, there's no way he's not aware of what's happening. He travels the roads. But just last week, the provincial government could not pass its budget. That is in some ways an admittance, surely, to say that we cannot fund the infrastructure projects that we need to get ahead with, like the potholes and. So there is intervention that is needed. And this is probably just the president doing what the president should be doing anyway.
The municipality is not working. It is not functioning. Why do we have 3 tiers of government in local, municipality, provincial, and national?
Hey,
the guys who are here on the foot, on the ground, are not doing their job. And there is no way that you're going to tell me that the president is going to come here and then suddenly tomorrow we're going to wake up and everybody in Gauteng is doing their job.
Yeah, especially with no budget too.
And I think the point that you're making is very important for me, because the president should know what's going on in the country on a general basis. And it should alarm him when a city has been falling apart for such a long time. So my question is actually, where has the president been? Right? Why is he not in touch with the crisis that's happening in the city of Joburg, the city of Tshwane, the city of Ekurhuleni? And why has people have been talking about the district development model for the longest time, where the 3 spheres of government are supposed to be working together? Why has all of this not happened before? Why is it the special occasion with a red carpet? And what worries me about it being a special occasion and a red carpet is that in times like this, I was speaking to the Uber driver yesterday who was saying, he was watching raids happening in Hillbrow all of a sudden. There's cleanup campaigns everywhere. Is he even going to get a real sense of what the issues are, or is he going to be shielded from them?
Right.
Because we assume he lives in the city. But I was told of a story in the Mbeki days where Mbeki would fly into places so he doesn't have to travel on the roads. Nah? I can't confirm or deny it. If it was,
could be.
But you get my sense that we take for granted he's on the roads, but maybe he's actually getting a curated experience.
Yeah.
Right.
What I'm interested in finding out is what our power listeners think should be on the agenda when the president has this 2-day meeting with the provincial premier, Panyaza Lesufi. What is top of the agenda? What should we remind the number one citizen of? What are the pressing issues that are happening in Gauteng, which is supposed to be a place that kicks on and takes on in terms of getting our country going? This is a situation where we are supposed to be a world-class African city only for the G20 members, according to Dada Morero.
And is 2 days enough? I don't think 2 days is enough.
Yeah, the one thing that we don't need right now, and something that we've experienced over many years as residents of the country, that is South Africa, is promises. We don't need you to say that you are shocked to see that this is the state of the roads.
Absolutely.
We don't need you to lose an iPad.
No shocked.
We just need things to be done. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Just don't come and say that I'm shocked to see that this is happening, but I'm going to be taking steps to make sure that these things get fixed, because we know, we've experienced it and we've seen it, that these things hardly ever get delivered after the promises are made.
And that's why we are chasing down the presidency, so we can ask, what is this going to actually look like in effect? But to the Power listeners, if the president came to your house not to ask for votes, but now during this term comes to your house and says, what should I know about the city that you're living in, the province that you're living in? I think the question we're asking here today is, what would you say to the president? What should be on the president's agenda? And since we know that the roads were being eroded yesterday, it's a good time to get an update on traffic.
Cancel this thing.
Power traffic.
That's the sentiment that I have for this trip. Just cancel this thing. You've seen how we live. Let's check out what's happening in your roads at the moment. If you're traveling on the N1 South, you can expect queuing traffic from Centurion heading towards Midrand. As you get to Midrand, major routes in that area are experiencing delays. You can expect some pressure as you're traveling on Dale Road South, approaching the Kruger Road intersection. If you're traveling on Gardens Road southbound, you can also expect queuing traffic as you're headed towards the 8th Road intersection. The R55 in Crowthorne is backed up approaching Arthur Avenue. A 20-minute backlog can be expected as you're traveling on Summit and Olifantsfontein Road eastbound as you're headed towards the Old Johannesburg Road, Old Pretoria Main Road intersection. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebogang Phukela.
Power traffic. Power 98.7 weekends. All your favorite hit music all day long. The best of the 80s, 90s, and now.
I know you wanna be the main one.
If it isn't a hit, we don't play it. This is what our weekends are made of. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. Weekdays 6 to 9 a.m.
The time on Power Breakfast is 6:51, and as we've been talking about the president's visit and making sure that he actually sees the real of Gauteng, there's a protest that is slated to happen later today in the city of Tshwane. And this is a protest that is happening under the guise of the Metal Workers Union, where 261 workers, they have their employment contracts terminated by the city, and this has got to do with the rapid transport system as well. And I was saying that I'm really hoping that the president sees the real, because protest is such a big part of the city, of our province, and what happens on a day-to-day basis. So we have with us the NUMSA spokesperson, Ms. Pagamile Hlubi Majola. I'm a bit nervous because I don't think I've ever spoken to Pagamile in real life, so I'm a little nervous. How are you doing, Sissy? Welcome to Power Breakfast.
Good morning. There's no need to be nervous, Tessa.
I'm so nervous talking to you.
Congratulations and welcome to the breakfast show.
Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about NUMSA's protest today and this worker strike.
So what's happening is that 261 workers are now in the lurch after the city of Tshwane terminated the contract with the Tshwane Affected Operations Investment Company. The Tshwane Affected Operations Investment Company is the company that was basically running the TRT Arieng service for the city of Tshwane. And that contract was terminated last year. There was a Section 189 process that was followed, which started in October. Process came to an end in December or early January, if I'm not mistaken. But the long and the short of it, Tessa, is that in the Section 189 consultations, because remember, this agency or this company is running the TRT service, the city is actually directly involved in the Section 189. And in the Section 189 consultation, they made a promise that the retrenchment packages would be paid by them. That was one of the promises they made. The other promise that they made is that these workers would be directly absorbed by the city to work either as station marshals. They promised that 110 workers would work as station marshals, and they promised that 151 workers would work as security guards and cleaners. None of those promises have been upheld. As I speak to you now, retrenchment packages have not been paid because the city has not paid the Tshwane Affected Operations Investment Company. Secondly, they've not directly employed these workers, and so these workers have no money, have received no salaries, have no packages, and it's causing them a lot of suffering.
And I was about to ask you that. Why are you coming to the doors of the city to protest and not at the doors of the outsourced company? But you're saying that the city has failed to pay the company, and so the company now has failed to pay these retirement packages to the workers themselves. And so that's why the door of the city needs to be knocked on. They are the final straw here, yes?
Absolutely. Nothing can happen without them paying that invoice which they promised to pay. I mean, the most recent conversation around that happened in January, where our officials approached them together with the company, the Tshwane Affected Operations Investment Company. Promises were made, but promises were not kept. And I think one of the other things we've got to also outline, Tessa, and expose is that when the city decided not to reabsorb these employees, these 261 employees, we are told that they have hired a fly-by-night security company to do the work.
Instead of the promise of actually having the workers coming in, taking those posts, they're now spending more money on other people, not these workers.
Absolutely. We've been told that two fly-by-night security companies, a company called MIG Security and another called Ramalepe Security, have been employed. We are told that these companies are not registered with CIRA and they are not registered with the National Bargaining Council for the private security sector. Workers are alleging that these companies are not paying any contributions towards UIF, medical insurance, and they've not been paid their salaries for January.
Okay,
so it really is a shameful situation that the city of Tshwane has put these workers in.
So you all are meeting this morning at the city of Tshwane at 9:30 for 10 a.m. to march. Besides what your demands are, because I think we've got a sense of some of the demands, is there a deadline in place here? As a protest organizer myself, when I'm not a DJ, I know that protests are nothing without a clear, what power concedes nothing without a demand, and I think a timeline demand is really important in these circumstances. What is the timeline that you're going to be holding, Dr. Moyo, the mayor of Tshwane, to?
We're giving them 5 days to respond to our demands. Our demands are basically that they need to reemploy these workers. This is what they promised. These workers must be directly employed. The second demand is that they must pay the invoice so that the workers can receive their retrenchment packages. I think it's quite disgraceful that the mayor, her salary has been paid. She's able to make sure that school fees of her children is sorted out, thanks to the taxes of the very same workers who are being denied their retrenchment packages. The city has a responsibility to correct this shameful issue and make sure that these workers are taken care of.
Pagamela, just one more insight from you is, we've been talking about the president visiting Gauteng, visiting in quote, scare quotes, because I don't know what that actually means in real life. But given the attention on the presidency and the Gauteng government, is this a time also to raise this kind of flag with the presidency and with Gauteng as the oversight bodies for municipalities? Because we often don't think about this as part of the challenges that cities face. Yes, service delivery challenges are there. Yes, fiscal challenges are there. But the ability to actually just get these administrative things right and these conversations about insourcing and outsourcing in these cities, is this not the time? I mean, I know we're talking about the city of Tshwane now, but when I think about the city of Joburg, and that technically we've outsourced most of the capacity of Joburg to entities and agencies that have boards, is this not a time to start having a conversation about the capacity, the state capacity at a municipal level here, and making sure that the state actually does what it's supposed to?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, NUMSA has raised this many, many times. The fact that the state has hollowed itself out by basically allowing the private sector to play a role in providing services. And now we see that the private sector is failing. I mean, this process of allowing private companies or private entities to do the work, some of them are not private entities, some of them are government agencies. But why are you outsourcing? Why are you involving third parties? Surely it would be simpler just to directly employ. And not only is it simpler, Tessa, it's cheaper.
Yes.
It's cheaper, and so it's the whole system makes no sense. I mean, if you just look at security guards, for example, or security workers, whenever they outsource these functions to private companies, there are always problems. I mean, as a union, we have been at the forefront of raising the flag around these issues. The fact that many of these private security companies are not registered. Even if they are registered, they're not complying. There's regulations, for example, when it comes to things like payment of the medical insurance, payment of UIF. I mean, UIF is a basic
state functions
for any company, but yet there is a failure to comply, and unfortunately municipalities and the state are failing to hold these companies to account and force them to comply with basic regulations.
Well, good luck with your protest today, and I hope that you do get a hearing from the Tshwane mayor. That was Pagamile Hlubi Majola speaking from NUMSA. She's the spokesperson of the Metal Workers Union. It is the top of the hour, time for the news.
Power News.
The top story is President Ramaphosa to visit Johannesburg today to address service delivery challenges and more rains forecast in Gauteng. A very good morning. I'm Nompumelelo Ngubeni. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to visit the city of Johannesburg today as part of a series of engagements which are aimed at enhancing service delivery in the province. The provincial executive will present to the president its 5-year program, which is aligned to the priorities of the 7th administration. This as the city has been grappling with various challenges, including potholes, water and electricity outages, as well as deteriorating infrastructure. Now, Ramaphosa will deliver the opening remarks during his meeting with the provincial Executive Committee, as well as the leadership of the Johannesburg Metro Council. Johannesburg's Public Safety MMC, Mgcini Chwaku, has called on the president to assist with plans to address the challenges facing the CBD.
So when the president comes down, we want to hear in terms of what is his plan on providing transit accommodation for the people here. If we can do that, it's fine. Secondly is that we need to put money on the inspectorate. Inspectorate of the, what you call this thing, ama planning, plans, and also townhouse guys, and also environmental health practitioners. We don't have enough. They don't have enough tools of trade.
Meanwhile, the South African Weather Services says a yellow level 2 warning for severe thunderstorms will remain in place as it continues monitoring the southern parts of the country for heavy rainfall. In Gauteng, rain is expected later today, but the services says the province will not experience any heavy rainfall from tomorrow going into the weekend. Furthermore, it says that there's 60% chance of thunderstorms in the northern parts of the country, mainly in the northwest province. The South African Weather Services forecaster Edward Engelbrecht says in KwaZulu-Natal they're closely monitoring areas that have been affected by recent floods.
Yeah, so it looks like for parts of KZN, at least for the next 3 days, we don't expect heavy rain for KwaZulu-Natal, especially Durban. It looks like mostly it's just going to be a light rainfall for today and tomorrow. And then looking at Durban for in case there's thunderstorms moving over the area. We know that it's been affected by heavy rainfall lately, and the soils are very saturated. So any thunderstorms moving over that area will have the potential to cause localized flooding.
At the same time, the city of Tshwane says progress is being made in resolving power issues across various regions. It comes after many areas were left without power, with residents facing blackouts. The city blames cable faults worsened by heavy rainfall for the widespread infrastructure failures. These failures have led to both block and single outages, which are being addressed. A spokesperson, Zintle Mahlati, says repair teams have been working around the clock to restore power, and additional teams have been deployed to speed up the process.
Our teams have been working tirelessly to restore power, and additional teams will be deployed to affected areas in order to speed up restoration. These teams will continue working overnight to restore supply wherever possible. We are pleased to report that progress has been made, with power successfully restored to areas such as Menlo Park. However, we acknowledge that many residents and businesses remain without electricity. We remain committed to resolving these outages as quickly as possible.
Police Minister Senzo Mkhunu is committed to resolving the backlog in unresolved cases. His comments come as he revealed that there's a backlog of 1.9 million unresolved cases nationwide. He made the statement while answering questions in Parliament yesterday. Mkhunu highlighted that the understaffing of detectives remains a major concern in addressing these cases.
What then are we doing? I've already indicated that we have calculated and even categorized what is this 1.9 million made up of? Which cases are like 5 years old? Which ones are 2 years old? And where are we on each one of those? Now, out of the whole of this of that work, we decided that we need to projectize that, meaning we need to employ people on contracts to deal with this particular backlog.
Taking a look at your financial indicators, the rand is trading at 18 rand 29 to the US dollar, 23 rand 57 to the pound, 19 rand 73 to the euro. A gold is trading at $2,917.12 a fine ounce. Brent crude oil is at $69.72 a barrel. A cloudy morning becoming fine afternoon is forecast in Gauteng. Johannesburg temperatures are at 18 and 30 degrees, 18 and 31 in Pretoria, 17 and 28 in Vereeniging. Recapping the top story in Power News this hour. President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to visit the city of Johannesburg today as part of a series of engagements which are aimed at enhancing service delivery in the province.
In power traffic, if you're in the city of Tshwane and traveling on the Mabopane Highway inbound, as you're traveling past the R513, you'll bump into a 25-minute backlog that's headed towards Eskia Mphahlele Drive. You can also expect some outbound delays on the Mabopane Highway with that pressure at just under 10 minutes from Bremer Street as you're headed towards Theo Martins. Queuing traffic can be expected as you're traveling on Transurania Road southbound, approaching the Daspoort Tunnel. In Pretoria Industrial, Roger Dyson Road eastbound is experiencing a 10-minute backlog that's between Afrikimeya and Voortrekker Road. You can also expect delays if you are in Doornkloof and traveling on Main Road northbound. Those delays are clear just after Nelmapius Drive.
Power News. On FM, online, and DSTV channel 889. This is Power 98.7.
Power Breakfast is proudly brought to you by Telkom Business. Possible begins here.
And now you're listening to Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms, weekdays 6 to 9 a.m. Taking your calls on 0861 987 000.
Good morning. My name is Kabo Sekwe from Brooklyn Primary, and what I would like to ask the president is that why don't we have more school holidays than less school days, and can he change the potholes, because in the morning there's a lot of accidents because people are rushing for school, and this is a real problem in South Africa.
Good morning. The time is 7:08. This is Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. And if you want to also send us a cute voice note, you can remember that the number is 083 303-7093. Keep it short, sharp, for 30 seconds as we get into the second hour. In the second hour, we're going to be continuing our theme around talking about Parliament and MPs. We're going to have Musi Maimane with us, talking about the postponement of the budget. We know that the MK party, we heard in the news earlier, has also raised this issue about the cost of postponing the budget and what it's going to mean for having a postponed budget, now a new budget time. There's a wasteful expenditure part of this. But we're also going to be just talking about what this means for the appropriations bill or the appropriations committee, which Musi Maimane is the chairperson of, because he's actually in charge of the budget from a parliamentary perspective. So we're going to be answering a bit of a question about what parliamentarians do. We'll hear from one parliamentarian what he has to do now that we have a budget that is falling apart. And then we have another story coming up later on where we're just going to be looking at some of the big issues in the markets. So the market update will be coming up in this hour as well. And there are some gains, some losses, and some changes within certain companies that we're going to be checking out for. And then we're going to have a tech focus this hour. We're going to have a look at the Mobile World Congress 2025. For now, I wanted to take a caller who's raising quite an interesting issue about a clip that we played earlier before the Trump conversation that we had. And so, Sipho, you wanted to understand why we are not talking about the content of President Trump mentioning Lesotho as a place that he doesn't know.
Yes.
Welcome to Power Breakfast.
Yes, good morning, Tessa. I actually wanted to talk about the content and actually what Trump is trying to say, not about sponsoring Lesotho, not what he actually says about not knowing the country. So basically, this is what we have always said, that the group is being sponsored by the West.
Yeah.
So this is evidence enough from what Trump is saying that they are giving $8 million to sponsor a content creation and all of those things that they are doing in order for the LGBTQ to expand in Africa. So this is just evidence. This is just proof.
So you're saying that it's proof of what exactly? That they are trying to expand the community?
Yeah, that's what Trump is saying, apparently.
So
that's what Trump is saying.
I think that what's important about that, and this is why I played that clip particularly, is that I'm not sure that Trump and Elon Musk fully grasp the changes that they're making. And I'm going to use a slightly different example first. When we talk about Ebola, last week, almost casually, Elon Musk says, we realized that when we affected U.S. aid funding, the aid funding, we actually closed down Ebola. And they did not realize they did it. And so when it comes to the issue of the LGBTQI plus community and what's being funded there, when you don't talk about the detail of what's being funded, it might sound like that. But when you talk about it in terms of it's a health funding initiative, because that community is part of key populations when it comes to HIV, AIDS and health issues, sexual reproductive health programs, then it's not really about saying they're trying to sponsor an agenda of making sure there are more people in that community, but that there's a health component to it that is missed. And I think that's what we miss out on when we are not understanding, when Trump himself doesn't seem to understand exactly what it is that they are impacting when they're cutting those things. You don't think so?
Thank you so much for that, Lati. I was almost taken away by actually what the content was, what Trump was saying. Yeah, but
because they've essentially ended health services, Sipho.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. My concern is I don't think Trump and Elon fully grasp what they're doing. And that's why I'm saying you can be the richest man in the world running the biggest company, but running a country is not a company. And, Duma Kubele, who we had yesterday, when we talk about the budget, he also says running a running a country is not like running your budget at your house, and I think we conflate these things, and I think they might be conflating it at the highest levels. But thank you for that and pointing us in that direction. I think we're going to try and take one more call before we go to our guest. Yes, Lesohonola from Pretoria. Welcome to Power Breakfast. What is your comment this morning?
Good morning, Tessa. I hope you'll enjoy this slot. For me, I want to talk about this issue of president. It worries me already. The president stays in Hyde Park. His house is in Hyde Park.
And Pretoria. He's got a house in Pretoria as well.
Exactly. And mind you, he's not quite conscious to the unspoken word. in terms of where his party is right now, that it's on a slippery slope. And if you keep trying to play to the gallery like they're doing now and not doing the actual work, they must be careful that they might not come back.
Yeah.
Once you're on a slippery slope like that, there are certain things that must come natural. One of them is you must be seen to be doing things deliberately, not for the sake of the media, because our people now can see through you,
I make a joke way too often. We talk about CR17. I used to make a joke about PR17, and that maybe there are times where the president's office is way too concerned with optics and the PR of it all rather than the substance. And I think you're right. I think one of the team members earlier, I think it was BBK, was saying that in his mind this is an ordinary course of events, that an oversight by a president of the largest city in his country should be a natural course of events, and knowing the day-to-day realities of the city, the textures of the country that you're governing. You cannot govern a country you don't know. And I think that's what you're raising as well. So thank you so much for raising that for us. I think we have a voice note that we're going to take as well.
Good morning, Tessa. Good morning, Lebza. Good morning, BBK. The issue of councillors and MPs, but we all know. We only see them during election season, when they come to your house and then they wash your washing, or they support your business of chicken feed and the baby magwinya. Otherwise, you'll never see them. And it's true. Even if you don't have electricity or your house is flooded, they'll tell you, Namangas. Kisolipo, good morning.
The people's representatives are not always with the people. But the time now is 7:15, and we're going to move to our story, actually, that is right in line with Parliament. On the line with us, we have Musi Maimane, the leader of BOSA, but also the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations. And I know we talk a lot about SCOPA in the public domain, and the Checks and Balances Committee of Parliament, but the Appropriations Committee looks at the budget and the way in which allocations are done. And so last week when we had this unprecedented situation where a budget wasn't tabled, this actually affected the work of Parliament. And so Musi Maimane is going to explain to us how Parliament has been affected by this delay. Musi, welcome to Power Breakfast. First time I think you've been with me on Power Breakfast. Sure that you've been on the show many times before.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners, and congratulations to you, and certainly having been on this slot a few times, I certainly look forward to the many conversations we'll have. So congratulations, and I wish you well.
Absolutely. So take the viewers, the listeners into your confidence. First, explain to us what the Standing Committee on Appropriations is and how it is that it functions before telling us how the budget being delayed has impacted on you.
Well, I think more than anything, South Africans need to know the only institution in the country that passes any laws is Parliament. It's not the executive. It is Parliament.
Yeah.
So by that, what I mean is what is typically called the budget is called an appropriations bill, which tells us where the money is allocated or how it's spent. Because it's a bill, it's a law. So effectively, I am like the uncle who sits on the other side to receive the proposal from the Minister of Finance.
So the Minister of Finance is actually coming to hand a budget to you to ask for your approval.
Effectively, it comes through our committee, and then it ends up becoming a recommendation of Parliament, and then it is once Parliament has voted on it, only then can the President sign it into law. So effectively, the Appropriations Committee is the committee that has oversight over the budget. It is given powers by the Money Bills Act, not only just to give oversight, but it can amend, it can make recommendations to amend, to reject, and certainly, if in the middle of the year a particular portfolio committee is in need of particular resources in some way or another, so long as they advance service delivery, the only way to process that is through the portfolio committee, which I chair. So in essence, it is the committee that looks at the performance of the budget rather than just, if you like, The distinction is that SCOPA comes in after the budget is spent. We look at how it is spent, whether it achieves its objectives, and how we can better utilize it.
And that clarity is really important because I don't think we often think about the budget as a law, as a bill that is being passed. But also the other part of it is something I always say to people about SONA. There's a lot of fanfare about SONA, a lot of song and dance, but SONA is not actually something that is a legal requirement. It's not something that, even the debate that happens afterwards, there's very little that can substantively be said about the work of Parliament in terms of doing anything about SONA. But the budget is a very different thing. So we could postpone SONA 100 times and it wouldn't matter. But with the budget, there are actual timelines here that are in place. And also the budget process started in March last year. So the fact that it's being held up right now is affecting your work. Explain to us the impact on Parliament when a budget is now postponed.
Yeah, absolutely. So like in passing any law, the bills that we process have to be passed in, so the budget has to eventually be voted in 4 months straight after it is tabled. It has to be done well before the month of June, July. So in essence, in that period, Parliament will have to express a vote on the budget, a view on what it thinks on it. And so when you have a delay, not only do you limit that time, because I think with a point you've made, which cannot be lost, that the budget is a bill, it actually goes into as a proposal. Then the Finance Committee has to look at whether it is aligned with the framework of what government's priorities look like. It then has to go into public consultation, which is what our committee does, so that citizens can give their views. Then an initial report is put back to Parliament, which is the report. And then after that, a whole lot of consultation in all the committees has to come through, and each of them have to do their work. And then ultimately it arrives back in Parliament to be voted on. So any delay not only does limit expenditure, because if it was to be delayed beyond the 1st of April, for argument's sake, so they couldn't table it by the 12th of March, the consequences would mean that each department would only have 45% to spend of its annual budget, which would limit its own programs.
So this is actually a potential calamity at this point, because in the third hour of the day, we're going to be talking to the DA, because they are saying that the DA is still not happy with the budget. Cabinet yesterday said that they think they found a consensus with the GNU, but the DA is saying that they don't agree with that. In the ANC majority days in the previous parliaments, this would almost be a non-issue because an ANC cabinet would be bringing it to an ANC majority parliament. But we haven't talked about the fact that even if the GNU agrees on their proposal, it could come to Parliament and Parliament could disagree. And not just once, but there are several budgets. Every department's going to table a budget and there's going to be a vote. And at any of those points, Parliament could say no. Am I correct?
Yeah, there's effectively 41 votes, and South Africans are used to the long nights where Parliament would sit and vote on each item. Effectively, those votes were designed so that you may not reject the budget in total, but you can reject a particular department's votes or whatever. What the difficulty is now is that we have no precedent as to what would happen in that event. As it feels as, it was the same under the impeachment process. We had to make the rules about how we manage that. Now we'd have to make rules about what happens when a budget is effectively when particular line items are voted out and are not agreed to. But what I think for all South Africans, what is absolutely crucial for South Africans to know is that Parliament is the place where they are represented. And whilst the executive may make proposals, it is where they need to give their submissions, make their inputs about what they feel about their budget. And I think the laws that we have in this country were designed so that those recommendations or those thoughts can be given effect to and be heard. And I think that's absolutely crucial. That the GNU can find itself or not is but one component in this puzzle of making the budget. What is more important is that actually Parliament must find its consensus and vote it in. And so I happen to think that our democracy was built with those checks and balances. We just have never utilized them because we had a simple majority, or we had an outright majority in the ANC, and therefore that check was almost internal rather than in institutions or the arms of government as Parliament is designed.
I mean, this conversation triggers me because I'm one of the 5 people in South Africa that actually watched the entire State Capture Commission live. And I did so because I started getting intrigued by these kinds of conversations about these intricacies of power behind the scenes. And I think the State Capture Commission, for all of its faults and controversies or good parts, was really good at detailing this kind of stuff. And one of the recommendations, or a big recommendation section in the State Capture report, is around Parliament doing its job better. And I think this points to that. But in 30 seconds, there was something that you said about that process that I don't want our listeners to miss out on. That beyond the budget being tabled, there is going to be another point where we can do public comment. And I know that as civil society organizations, they'll be doing a lot of fanfare about commenting about the speech before it happens and what should the minister say. But tell us a little bit about, just in 30 seconds, the process after the speech has been tabled, where we as the public can give our input and comment.
So for our committee on the 1st of April, which is a great opportunity, is that citizens, regardless of where you come from, whether you are an NGO, whether you are a trade union, whether you're a business, you can make your submissions, and these will be virtual. It'll be a hybrid, so you can make an application. The adverts have gone out publicly, and the dates will be on the 1st and 2nd of April, and people can make submissions. It's important that we hear your voice so that we can put that in the report, and the Minister of Finance is obligated to respond to those. So that will happen then. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's Musi Maimane. He is the chairperson of the Appropriations Committee in Parliament. And again, I want to encourage us all as power listeners, when that budget finally gets tabled, listen to it and ask yourself, what are my comments? And on the 1st of April, look out for that opportunity to participate. Now for traffic.
Power traffic.
Thanks, Tessa. A very good morning to you. Let's check out what's happening in your roads. We start off in Centurion. If you are traveling on Old Johannesburg Road, you can expect delays approaching Olifantsfontein. Queuing traffic on Samrand Avenue eastbound can be expected, with pressure starting from Sterling Road heading towards the N1 highway. If you are traveling on Roy Hayes-Kraal Road southbound, you can expect queuing traffic at the moment. Delays are clear just after you pass the Panorama Road intersection. I'm also seeing some pressure as you're traveling on 8 Road eastbound approaching the Old Johannesburg Road intersection. That's also in Centurion. If you are in the city of Johannesburg and you're traveling on the M1 northbound, the usual delays can be expected approaching Empire. Heavy congestion can be expected in the west of Joburg as you're traveling on Ondekas Road eastbound. That pressure is headed towards joining the N1 highway via William Nichols Street. If you are traveling on Albertina Sisulu Road eastbound, you can expect to queue for about 10 minutes as you're traveling past the Cecil Payne Sports Ground. You'll bump into that 10-minute backlog approaching the N1 highway interchange. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebogang Phukela.
Power traffic.
The silence of a till that hasn't rung in a while is deafening to any business owner. That's why Telkom Business wants to unleash the hero in you with a Business Fusion deal. Get a versatile tablet, LTE 120 gigs anytime data, 120 gigs night surfer data, Smart Voice Basic, plus a professional website for only 699 Rand per month. And make the till ring again. Call 10213, click telkom.co.za or go to any Telkom shop. T&C apply. Telkom. Possible begins here.
This market update is proudly brought to you by DSO Consulting Group. Truth, trust, results. Power markets.
So this morning we have with us Pietri Redelinghuys, the founder of Hendriella Capital. We're going to have to get that. I'm going to get that pronunciation right because I have no idea what that word is, to be honest. Pietri, what is the name of your company, Chief?
Good morning. It's Herenia.
Herenia. There we go.
Herenia, yeah, and it means wealth.
Fantastic. So we start off this morning with a story about Woolworths. I always thought Woolworths was a clothing company that sold food. Turns out it's now becoming a food company that sells clothing?
Yeah, so it looks as though I suppose a few ironies and puns there, the cash cow of the business is the food business, right? The CEO even said something along the lines of, if I can find the quote somewhere, we are a world-class food business, or we have a world-class food business, which remains our engine room for value creation, and we are building the foundational capabilities of our apparel business to drive long-term sustainable growth. Interesting. I actually never thought. I always thought Woolworths was, first a clothing company. Then I suppose it makes sense because the food stores have grown massively. Anyway, turnover actually increased 5.7%. Adjusting earnings before interest and tax came down 13.7%. Headline earnings fell 24%. So essentially, they quote that the clothing business isn't doing as well as they hoped. There was also a number of once-offs, in the previous year that they didn't have again. So that's part of the reason why the revenue dropped as much as it did, or the profit dropped as much as it did. But South Africa sales increased by something like 9%, which wasn't too bad. Woolies Dash, the sort of delivery competitor, I suppose everybody's entered into this market now. Like the Checker 6060 guys, that's up something like 49%. So overall, I'd say it wasn't necessarily a bad set of results. I think it was just, it's a bit concerning to see that there is, a bit of contraction in the revenue space, particularly driven by clothing, and the market really didn't like it. I mean, the share was down something like 6.3% yesterday. So it shows a little bit of difficulty. I mean, they sort of also say that in Australia, for example, sales dropped by some 8%, particularly in the clothing retail space. So it's not all is well in paradise, but in the local front in South Africa, at least the food business is doing phenomenally well, as we can see. It's essentially the offshore international businesses that are struggling. And this is, I think, a common theme for South African businesses when they go overseas. The operating environment is not the same as good old sunny South Africa. Even though sometimes it rains really hard here.
But they don't seem to think that this is related to the consumer spending. And that's what Cashbuild, for example, is saying, that they think that the consumer is under pressure when it comes to spending, and that's why their business is doing badly. Curio has a similar story where they just think that the consumer doesn't have the money to spend with. Tell us a little bit about whether you agree with Cashbuild and Curio that what's happening with their businesses is that the customer just doesn't have money, despite two pots and all sorts of tax breaks, that we just don't have the money in the system. We are chasing time a little bit.
Yeah, so I think you're connecting two very important dots here. So thank you for that. I think if you look at Cashbuild, for example, the turnover is slightly higher. It's a similar story, but Kiro Holdings, being private schools, they got absolutely hammered on actually reducing learner numbers for the first time ever that I remember of seeing. So they sort of had, a bunch. They increased it by over 1,000 last year, and then as this year began, it decreased by 1,000 again. And they said, look, it's a tough environment out there. People can't necessarily afford private schools. That's why they're taking these kids out of Kiros, I guess, for the first time ever. And that's something that's been echoed by Cashbuild, which sold, primarily to a cash market. People don't really or can't buy their own credit. So they're saying, look, it's a tough environment. We're seeing less feature outdoors than we expected. We're growing slower than we thought. We're finding it more difficult to pass through inflation-related price increases to the customer. People are still under pressure. So yes, we have a situation where, the sentiment of you and me and everybody else is really improving, and the sentiment for business is going better, but the economic condition is still pretty tough. So what that spells to me is probably more interest rate cuts in future.
So the cost of living is basically just catching up with us. Quickly, 30 seconds, our indicators.
All right. So we had a relatively strong day yesterday. I mean, the brand was absolutely power. It's currently trading at 18.26 Rand. So yesterday it was, let me just get the number here. Yesterday it was around 1% of 93 basis points stronger. Gold trading at $2,918. Brent crude oil trading at $70 a barrel. In the U.S., the market is currently flattish. So yesterday had a mostly flat day. It's trading at 0.06% higher. This is U.S. futures, of course, at 5,834. If we look at Bitcoin, I think that's something people are interested in, 2% up, trading at 92,466. If we look at the what else would you like to know? Things that I look at, maybe not things you look at the euro price.
We'll catch up with more indicators in a little bit. But thank you. That was Pietri is from Rienya Capital. And that was our power market update.
This market update was proudly brought to you by Ndiso Consulting Group. Truth, trust, results.
The Ndiso Consulting Group is an authentically African and globally wide management consulting firm which unlocks development by empowering institutions that enable Africa's development. We improve the performance of towns and cities, private and public organizations, as well as local and regional economies. Our solutions to complex management problems are end-to-end and evidence-based. Visit ndisoconsulting.co.za for more info. Ndiso Consulting Group. Truth, trust, results.
The time now is 7:34. Time for news headlines.
Thanks, Tessa. Good morning. The trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning in the Western Cape High Court. So far, the court has heard testimony from 2 police officers who were the first to respond the night the grade 1 pupil went missing. Yesterday, defense attorneys revealed that 2 of the accused, Jaquina Polis and Stevino van Rijn, claimed that they were assaulted by police on the day of their arrest. Both men alleged that they were handcuffed, suspended in mid-air, and had plastic bags placed over their heads as police demanded the truth. Jocelyn was reported missing on the night of February 19th last year. Apollos detailed the alleged torture that he endured, stating that since February last year, he had been interrogated by multiple police officers, though he could not recall their names.
They told me if I wanted to talk, I should shake my head. This carried on while I could not breathe. The pain was so severe that I felt that I was going to die. This was repeated several times. Paragraph 66. To get them to stop torturing me, I shook my head and I removed the plastic bag and I said that I will talk, even though I had already told everyone what I knew. I realized that if I do not tell them what they want to hear, they will kill me.
The Home Affairs Department has vowed that the war on illegality in the country will be won. Minister Leon Schreiber made these remarks, confirming that work is already underway to address the immigration crisis. His comments come amid increasing concerns about the high number of undocumented migrants who are entering and residing in the country. Critics argue that this influx is making it difficult to manage the migration population effectively. In the past, there have been concerns about the strain migrants place on public services, such as healthcare and education, which can lead to tensions with local communities. Schreiber added that new technology will be introduced to help minimize corrupt activities within the immigration system.
There are processes underway to make sure we get full-time drones for the Border Management Authority, body cameras for the Border Management Authority, and, as I mentioned, all the work being done to introduce an electronic travel authorization, which will then lead to automated entry and exit. Deputy Speaker, I want to emphasize this point. You cannot bribe a computer. When you show up to an electronic gate and you scan electronic travel authorization or you scan your passport, it will either open or close.
Thank you, Honourable
It does not ask for a bribe.
More on these and other power stories at 8 o'clock.
In power traffic, if you're traveling on CR Swart Drive eastbound, that's in Bromhof, traffic is backed up at the moment. Delays are just under 20 minutes, and they start shortly before you get to the Bromhof Village Shopping Centre, heading towards the Malibongwe Drive intersection. Heavy congestion can be expected as you are getting out of Rand Park Ridge on Easter Road Drive eastbound, approaching Boschkop Avenue. You can also expect a 15-minute backlog as you're traveling on Molope Road northbound as you're headed towards joining Easter Road. The N1 northbound is heavy this morning with delays from Bears-Nordier Drive clearing just before you get to the Rivonia Road exit. You can also expect a lot of pressure in Linden as you are traveling on 3rd Avenue as well as 1st and Rustenburg Road southbound approaching Tana Road.
Your weather at this hour: Johannesburg starting on a low of 18, a very high of 30. Vereeniging 17 to 28, Soweto 19 to 29, Kempton Park starting on a 19, ending at 29 as well. Pretoria a scorcher 18 to 31, Centurion 19 to 30, and Randfontein 17 to 28.
Power Sports.
And kicking off from the football field, Miguel Cardoso and Lucas Ribeiro Costa won the Betway Premiership Coach and Player of the Month awards for February, and it was the second time that the Mamelodi Sundowns coach and player bagged the prizes this season. It was indeed a clean sweep from the Brazilian frontman, as he also walked away with the goal of the month. And moving on to action between the four white lines in his first match back at Golden Arrows, Umangoba Mngeti Amper Marnist Amper Angobeni, because he put the brakes on the Mamelodi runaway train when his Abafana Bestende held Miguel Cardoso's Abafana style to a 1-1 draw in Mpumalanga, not the province but the township of Hammersdale. And also Orlando Pirates returning to winning ways thanks to a header by their skipper Ubodlela Unkosinathi Sibisi, and this gave them a victory over Chippa United, winning 1-0 at the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. Let's hear from the captain Usbisi on how he feels about the game.
A good team effort, it wasn't easy coming here. We had to bounce back, in the game against Marumo, and I'm glad I got on the score sheet and were able to help the team. We've been working very hard, at the training field, and we're glad it's finally paying off. We need to help our forward players, if they can't get something, in the game, we have to come in with set pieces, and, if this wasn't for me only, I could give the young man, Umboraz, solid performance from him, and, it can only get better from here.
And elsewhere, as we move on now to the results of what was happening last night, we saw that Sekhukhune United scored first against Richards Bay, only to lose that match at 2-1. And Cape Town City and TS Galaxy playing to a 1-0 draw. Amazulu and Supersport United couldn't find the net, having to settle for a goalless stalemate. As well, we are moving on to the Champions League. Bayern Munich cruising to a 3-0 win over Bayer Leverkusen. Harry Kane amongst the goals there, and Barcelona will take a 1-0 advantage to the second leg after winning 1-0 at Benfica, and Inter Milan winning 2-0 at Feyenoord. And in Paris, Harvey Elliott rising from the bench to steal a 1-0 victory for Liverpool away at PSG. Elliott's winner in the 87th minute was only the second strike by the Reds in the entire night. While Elliott got the goal, the hero of the night was the Brazilian clubman Alisson, who made no less than 9 saves. And Liverpool boss Arne Slot was indeed full of praise for PSG.
It's pure the quality of Paris Saint-Germain and the way they've played this whole season. I can say it one more time. All the underlying stats show you that they were the best team in Europe till now, except for the league table. But they've had Arsenal, they've had Bayern Munich, they've played Atletico Madrid, and they've played Man City, and still have the best underlying stats. And they showed today. And I already knew it, but the players saw it today as well, and our fans and whole of England, that Luis Enrique made an incredible team here after 3 windows. So much pace, so much work rate, so much quality in the midfield, how they handle the ball. So it was an unbelievable challenge for us to get away here with a result, and we know it's going to be a hard one in a week.
The bragging rights are finally with Liverpool this week, taking them from Arsenal a little bit. You guys should have seen BBK smile this morning.
As white as the ocean. And we're moving to the tennis court, where I'm saving an ace about Naomi Osaka crashing out on the first round of Indiana Wells yesterday, falling 6-4 and 6-4 to Camila Osorio in her first tournament since injury forced her out of the Australian Open. Now, former world number 1 Osaka, now ranked 56th in the world, looked rusty against the 52nd ranked Colombian, struggling to find the range on her powerful ground strokes. And rounding off with EFC, Africa's first major combat sports event of 2025 will kick off today when the interim featherweight champion Rude Relentless Roots face undefeated challenger from Zambia, Ken the Takeover Sikeletu. Roots will defend the belt in honor of its former wearer, which is close teammate Uikeu Kabesa. And the supporting bouts in this EFC 121 will see Billy the Kid, Ross Eisen, and Ayanda the Power Zwane taking on each other. And for that, with Power Sports on Power Breakfast, I am BBK. We'll talk again at the top of the hour.
Power Sports.
We can't make you a morning person.
Good morning to you, Power family. Good morning.
But we can surely make your weekend mornings. Everything you need to make your weekend mornings better.
Are you this morning? I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a fabulous week.
Power Power Weekend Breakfast with Tshwajo Maagi. A little bit of this, that, and everything you need to start your weekend.
It's also important to differentiate between a need and a want, a luxury.
But what if I need what I want?
Saturdays 6 to 10 a.m. and Sundays 6 to 9 a.m. on Power 98.7.
We are members of the Weekend Breakfast Church, hence we don't go to other churches.
Now we're talking. All the action packed in 180 minutes. Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. Weekdays 6 to 9 a.m.
The time now is 7:43. We are firmly into the second hour of the show. At 7:50, we're going to be talking about tech. We're introducing a tech feature into the Power Breakfast, and we're going to be talking about the Mobile World Congress 2025. Apparently, our smartphones can be solar powered, they tell me. And so maybe that's true, and we're going to find out a little bit more about that at our 7:50 feature.
Power traffic.
Solar powered phones?
Hey!
Is this like a new feature that's about to be added on to
I don't know if I must put my wrist in the air when I don't know how this works, guys.
Yeah, we're going to have to hear from the tech whiz that we'll be speaking to. Let's check out what's happening in your roads. We start off in the city of Tshwane at the moment. If you're traveling on the N4 westbound, there's queuing traffic to expect as you're traveling towards the Proof Plus interchange. I do expect to queue for just under 15 minutes from Watermeer. Lindburn Road southbound is backed up from the N4 highway as you're headed towards the Lindburn Shopping Center. Over in Hatfield, if you're traveling on Linwood Road, there's queuing traffic to expect in that area as well, with delays that are in both directions as you're approaching the Kings Highway. Brooklyn Road is slow as well with delays in both directions as you're headed towards the Duxbury Road intersection. You can also expect some pressure as you are traveling on Yanshoba Street, that's in both directions, approaching the Murray Street intersection. Over in the city of Johannesburg, if you're traveling on the M1 southbound, there's queuing traffic approaching the Marlborough Drive exit. In Houghton Estate, Joe Slover Drive northbound is backed up. Delays are headed towards joining the M1 highway. I'm also seeing a lot of pressure as you're traveling on Louis Botha Avenue eastbound as you are getting out of central Joburg. I do expect those delays as you are approaching First Avenue. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebohang Pukela.
Power traffic.
Power Breakfast Trends.
See, BBK is doing a crip walk there for this, yeah?
Yeah,
see
man.
you. See
Serena,
you. Yeah.
what do you say?
Yeah, you were around when Tupac and Biggie were beefing back in the day. I can see the moves.
Just say.
Yeah, but let's just get into it. Check out what's happening in the world of social media. Lesotho has been trending. And I hate it when my people actually made a laughing stock, guys. I know I make jokes about our neighboring country now and again, but only we can do it, right? So people as far as the United States don't have the right to be bashing our neighbors.
Yeah, no. I mean, especially saying they don't exist. I mean, they're inside us and we really don't think they exist, but...
Yeah, so just in case, I think that's a shot that is being fired right now. The people of the Mountain Kingdom, they're looking to expropriate land without compensation. Be careful. Your hometown might be extracted.
And if they like, they can take their water.
You know what I mean? Yeah, and you'll be thirsty. Yeah, and you don't want to be thirsty. But now there's a joke that's happening after that video went viral on social media. Donald Trump saying that no one has ever heard them about Lesotho before, but the USAID has been funding LGBTQI organizations in the country. And you know what? I understand where Donald Trump is actually coming from, right? Because we know that a lot of Americans are actually geographically impaired. Right? Some of them don't even know where Tulsa, Oklahoma is. Like if you gave them a map within your own country, please point out to where Tulsa, Oklahoma is. You wouldn't even know. So we understand.
I saw a TikTok when an American was asked about what country they live in, and they literally said, "I live in North America."
You get what I mean? Yeah, these are the same guys that call a sport that's only being played in America
a world tour.
Exactly, World Series. So you are quite oblivious and ignorant to the rest of the world. And another thing that we all know is that the U.S. will always be hostile to anything that is called Marashi, guys.
Oh yeah. The men in blankets.
Yeah, the men in blankets. Yeah, I'll explain that one later. Yeah, I think this is also great because African countries also need to push to be self-sufficient and not depend on any savior to fund our things in the continent, right? So it's actually big ups to Donald Trump. We'll get to stand up for ourselves. So to my people in Lesotho, I know that they've cut your LGBTQI funding. Don't cry nor beg. Just protect your nation's pride.
Very nice one. Very nice one.
But we move on to Xolani that's been trending, yeah? We've spoken about how much, on the show, we've spoken about how much activism will and should play a big part in building the country and restoring order. And this Xolani dude, I'm not too sure if you guys have seen him. Xolani dude who's been fighting the scourge of drugs in the country. He might have gone on the wrong side of the law now and again, but social media seems to know that his intentions were good, right? And just needed guidance from law enforcement. And that's exactly what Josie's MMC for public safety has actually done with Xolani, who's also a TV star, right? He said he's roped him in now for a sting operation. I think you touched on it a bit earlier on.
Sir.
A sting operation that was happening in the inner city yesterday, busting drug dealers and putting an end to their operation. And social media just welcomes this move of partnering with Xolani, and they just hope that MMC Mchwaku lives up to his name and just keeps him around because his name is like Mqini.
Keep him, man. Keep him.
Yeah, but I think it's high time someone deals with this problem of drugs in the country. Yeah, I'm going to have a lot of play on that high side. Maybe we should stop calling those things high-rise buildings.
People thought you needed to get high
before you wake up. You know what I mean?
Let me tell you what, I was going to read a sport bulletin, but then I got high.
Ooh, yeah. Da, 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 da. Yes, but let's move right along. Lent has been trending. So the Catholic Church marked the start of Lent yesterday with the Ash Wednesday service. So yesterday felt kind of similar to Election Day on social media, where all you see on the timeline during Election Day is mocked fingers, right? So yesterday was the day for the forehead to actually shine while being ashy at the same time. The contrast, yeah? It's time for a lot of people to actually fast 40 days until Easter. But fasting has become so different nowadays. I grew up at a time when fasting was associated with constant need for zambak, you know? Because you're so hungry that your mouth looks like you're on crack during the Ronald Reagan era. Like, that's the fasting that I know. Now people are just saying that, no, I'll just give up tweet. Yeah, guys, that's not fasting.
It's about being ashy. You must be ashy.
Yeah, you need to be ashy. Hence, the start of the Lent period and fasting is Ash Wednesday. So with the way that things are actually happening in the world right now, I agree that we actually need to get closer to God. We have leaders right now literally gambling people's lives and threatening them like a roulette table. You know what I mean? So we really just need like Jesus to take the wheel.
Well, talking about roulette tables, I see that we've been gambled on here with entire soccer clubs being bought and sold and gambled on here.
Yeah, Royal AM has been trending. I'm not too sure. Did you touch on that story?
No, because the story is postponed because their games are postponed.
Yeah, so I think, yeah. So I see what you did there. It may have flown over me for a bit, but I see you brought your own gags to the party, BBK.
It's rubbing off, man.
But the auction sale of the KZN-based side owned by Mamkhize after running into some tax trouble seems to be going. And I saw that story, and I just thought that this should actually give us an answer to the question of why do other teams not get the support that is enjoyed by Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs? That's because they don't stick around long enough to build the support, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like because Royal AM just came through. They uprooted a whole team that had a loyal fan base
Bloemfontein Celtics.
Bloemfontein Celtics, and they just used it as FIFA career mode for Andy Lempisan, where you're like building up your own player. But now, unfortunately, they're gonna have to sell the team. So if you're interested, you should have a deposit of about R1 million. That's if you are ready to go bid for it. I think we can Kazata. There are a lot of people that we can use to just Kazata.
I know a
this
few
kind of money.
machinistas.
Yeah? Are you one of them?
No.
Yeah, but you need to make sure if you buy that team, you must still go out there and hand out bonuses on the pitch, guys. That's tradition. That's culture. Walk in. Here's 10,000 for you. False 9.
Power 98.7 weekends. All your favorite hit music all day long. The best of the 80s, 90s, and now.
I know you wanna be the main one.
If it isn't a hit, we don't play it. This is what our weekends are made of. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Tessa Dooms on Power 98.7, 6 to 9 a.m.
The time is 7:53, and we have a Thursday tech feature that we're introducing. So it is Tech Thursdays on Power Breakfast. So we have with us Maxwell Ramtler, who is a tech enthusiast and an innovation enthusiast, to tell us a little bit more about the World Congress on tech, the Mobile World Congress, and tech solar-powered smartphones. Morning, Max. Welcome to Power Breakfast.
Hey. Good morning. Thank you for having me here.
So tell us a little bit about the Mobile World Congress 2025.
So the Mobile World Congress, maybe let's take a step back on there. It's an annual conference around technology and the things that are coming down the line, which is something people like me, enthusiasts, are very keen to know what's coming next, what's on the edge of innovation. And that's what the mobile conference is really about. And it doesn't just cover mobile devices like your smartphones and your phone, wearables. It also covers things like your laptops and all of that. Now, what is quite interesting about this year is some of this year's innovations, and I'm not going to go through all of them because the conference is still going. There is still a lot of them.
Right. I mean, there's 1,200 speakers at this conference.
See what I mean? So, there's a lot to listen to and there's a lot to pick from. But remember, this is for all markets. What I would like to do today is look at something that I think is closer to South Africans, which is how do I keep my devices powered?
Absolutely, because our energy crisis keeps biting us.
Absolutely. It keeps coming back, and it's become a part of who we are. We have to plan for it. I mean, even when you plan for a new house now, the next thing you look at is how do I keep this thing alive if Eskom is not able to give me power for whatever reason. And that's very important. Now, what's come through here, and this is something I wanted to just talk about, we live in a world where our augmentations are a part of who we are. What I mean by augmentations, your phone. You take your phone everywhere. If you leave your phone, you feel disconnected from the world. So it's an augmentation. It's a part of you. That's what's become with the smartphone. I mean, your car is an augmentation. It just helps you with transport. Your house is an augmentation. It just helps you with where to live or shelter. Your clothing is an augmentation because, you don't want to walk around with.
And these days, our smartphones are really like a part of our hands at this point. I think, the last time I left my smartphone anywhere, my day literally fell apart. And so keeping it powered is a good idea. So I'm very interested in the idea of using solar, but I just don't understand. Am I going to be standing in the sun with it? How do we get solar-powered smartphones?
Simple answer will be mostly yes, but solar technology has changed a little bit because it's not just about solar per se. It's about light. What we're seeing now is at the development line where technology is moving to, from a solar charging point of view and PV point of view, is that any form of light, or at least a quality level of light, can add to charging your device. So I don't necessarily have to sit with my phone and my laptop in the sun.
So this
recharge,
this talks about artificial light as well, because that would help Europe out a ton, because we know when the winter hits the northern hemisphere, their sun kind of diminishes almost to nothing.
Absolutely.
But you're saying artificial light can be part of this as well?
Exactly. So this is all a concept. Now, I need to be very clear. This is not something you're going to go down to the shops and buy today.
Mm-hmm.
This is a prototype. This is still going to go into prototyping and other things from a development point of view. This is a concept that's been presented by two specific companies, one Chinese, but also Lenovo. The amount of work that's obviously gone into developing this as a concept doesn't mean that it's going to go into production today or tomorrow. There's still a bit of a journey to go. But yes, artificial light is being looked at as a source of electricity as well.
I mean, this is interesting because this is what these kinds of conferences, the Mobile World Conference 2025 is all about, is thinking about and talking about what's possible now, what's possible in the future, and particularly the link between mobile and AI-driven technologies, I'm sure is going to be a big conversation at this conference as well. I mean, we're all looking now at our WhatsApp since Meta has introduced so many AI functions into it. I mean, we're all getting really, really spooked by the way that TikTok is able to produce in its algorithms TikToks about conversations we're having with our mates. So I'm sure all of these things are coming up, in real time. But you're talking about what's possible in the future. What else do you think is exciting about these prospects, especially when it comes to something like solar-powered devices?
The truth is, when it can make it small form, make it as small as it is, it means that the applications extend from just a mobile device or a laptop. Consider this the possibility that we could actually have electric cars that charge themselves.
Right.
We could actually get housing, or we've already got tiles that actually generate solar, but then it becomes a little easier and a little cheaper when it rolls out to the rest of the world, when the market gets that much bigger. So the applications extend beyond the imagination, quite frankly.
And are South Africans part of this conversation? Our techies and our geeks, as they were, I use the word geek, not derogatory in a derogatory sense. Geek Culture is one of my favorite organizations in the country. I need to get them on one of these tech stints, one of the Tech Thursdays. But are South Africans at these events? Are we participating, or are we just waiting to be the consumers at the end of the line?
What is most intriguing is that South Africa we still have a very large innovation culture. So we come up with a lot of products. You've just spoken about how AI is going to be changing our world. South Africans are, in some cases, some companies, I don't want to put out any companies just yet, but some companies are at the forefront of the application of AI. And some of these ideas and some of these innovations come from South Africa, from something as simple as how do we apply this to power management? How do we apply this to home management? How do we apply this to home automation? How do we apply this to transport? And how do we apply this to something that is very key in South African retail, security? There's a lot of technology that is being developed around that. I mean, even your identity at this stage, been interacting with a company that actually does a lot of that with AI, in order to verify that you are who you say you are, using Home Affairs and putting AI on top of that.
And this is not only private, actually. The CSIR has actually got a bank of innovations that we haven't really used yet. Yeah, and so I'm glad to hear that. So that was our Tech Thursday Innovation feature. It's going to be coming to us every Thursday. That was Maxwell Ramutla, the tech innovation enthusiast that we're going to be having on the show many times. The time is now 8:01. Time for the news.
Power News.
The top story is President Ramaphosa to deliver opening remarks at a meeting with provincial executive and Johannesburg Metro Council leadership. And the trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning.
And in your sports, Tessa Dooms Osaka out of Indian Wells, box to play 15 fixtures in 2025, and it is a Sundowns hat-trick as Cardoso and Costa win big in Betway Premiership Monthly Awards. Well, Mina now, Sotibana, 8:35.
A very good morning. I'm Nompumelelo Ngubeni. President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the opening remarks during his meeting with the Provincial Executive Committee and the leadership of Johannesburg Metro Council this morning. He's expected to visit the city of Johannesburg as part of a series of engagements which are aimed at enhancing service delivery. Now, the Provincial Executive will present to the President its 5-year program aligned to the priorities of the 7th administration. This as the city has been grappling with various challenges, including potholes, water, electricity outages, as well as deteriorating infrastructure. Now, our Pound News reporter Nkosinathi Shazi is live from the city of Johannesburg Council chambers. Nkosinathi, tell us what this oversight visit aims to achieve.
Well, Nompumelelo, the Government of National Unity, which is the cabinet, is set to meet with the Gauteng Provincial Exco, which often refers to itself as the Government of Provincial Unity. Now, this meeting by the cabinet will be the 4th engagement between national and provincial, as the cabinet has engaged with Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal, and the Limpopo provincial government. Now, the president will be accompanied by his cabinet of ministers and deputy ministers, and are expected to discuss matters relating to how to strengthen the 3 spheres of government, of course, national, provincial, and local. Now, with the 2026 local government elections on the horizon, the meeting will discuss a number of issues, including service delivery, budget constraints faced by the provincial council, and governance in Gauteng. Now, tomorrow as well, the president will be visiting the Johannesburg Council, led by Mayor Morero, as part of the district development model. Now, as things stand at the moment, Nompumelelo, roads in and around Braamfontein have been officially closed, so try to avoid those areas as we await the arrival of the president, the Gauteng premier, and the cabinet of ministers. And of course, the president will deliver the opening remarks at 10 a.m. Nkosinathi Shazi, Power News, reporting live from the Johannesburg Council chambers.
All right, in other news, a trial into the disappearance of 7-year-old Jocelyn Smith resumes this morning at the Western Cape High Court. So far, the court has heard testimony from 2 police officers who were the first to respond the night the grade 1 pupil went missing. Yesterday, defense attorneys revealed that the 2 of the accused claimed that they were assaulted by police on the day of their arrest. Both men alleged that they were handcuffed, suspended in mid-air, and had plastic bags placed over their heads as police demanded the truth. Jocelyn was reported missing on the night of February 19th last year. One of the accused details the alleged torture that he endured, stating that since February last year, he had been interrogated by multiple police officers, though he could not remember their names.
They told me if I wanted to talk, I should shake my head. This carried on while I could not breathe. The pain was so severe that I felt that I was going to die. This was repeated several times. Paragraph 66. To get them to stop torturing me, I shook my head and they removed the plastic bag and I said that I will talk, even though I had already told everyone what I knew. I realized that if I do not tell them what they want to hear, they will kill me.
The Mbulawa family finally heard some of the influences that led to their child's murder. A 4-year-old, Kia Mbulawa, died in hospital last year after she was found stashed inside a traveler's bag, which was carried by an undocumented woman from Eswatini. A 34-year-old appeared in the Johannesburg High Court yesterday, and she was handed 30 years direct imprisonment for the murder. The convicted murderer told the court that she'd never intended to kill the child. Here's Power News reporter Finance Monday with the story.
Eswatini national Nonhlelelwa Matsebula arrived in South Africa in 2018, hoping to get a job. Matsebula could not get a stable job because she entered the country illegally. The 34-year-old then started selling sweets on the side of the road, but her business was not making the desired profit. Matsebula last year came up with another plan to kidnap 4-year-old Kia Mbulawa and demand a ransom from her parents. Prosecutor Colin Ryan read Matsebula's plea and sentence agreement statement in court.
I learned in one of the videos on social network, YouTube, of ways of making quick money. The extortion of a child and calling the parents and demanding a certain ransom. The deceased in this matter happened to be the victim. I noticed her parents are well off and they will be able to pay the amount, and I will dump or drop the child at a certain place.
The Johannesburg High Court sentenced Matsebula to 30 years in prison for murder.
Things did not go according to my plan, as I was caught in the process and unfortunately the child lost her life.
Mbulawa's mother, Nokukanya, had this to say outside court.
She took something precious from me. My daughter will never come back. She took it from me. She broke me. Hopefully one day I will heal, but I don't think it will be anytime soon. Yeah.
Bafana Nzimande, Power News, Johannesburg.
And the Home Affairs Department has vowed to win the war on illegality in the country. Minister Leon Schreiber made these remarks, confirming that efforts are already underway to tackle the immigration crisis. His comments come amid rising concern about the high number of undocumented migrants entering and staying in the country. And critics say this influx is making it harder to manage the migrant population. There have been posed concerns about the pressure migrants place on public services such as healthcare and education, which can cause tensions with local communities. Schreiber also added that new technology will be introduced to help reduce corruption within the immigration system.
There are processes underway to make sure we get full-time drones for the Border Management Authority, body cameras for the Border Management Authority, and, as I mentioned, all the work being done to introduce an electronic travel authorization, which will then lead to automated entry and exit. Deputy Speaker, I want to emphasize this point. You cannot bribe a computer. When you show up to an electronic gate and you scan electronic travel authorization or you scan your passport, it will either open or close.
Thank you,
It does
Honourable
not
Minister.
ask for a bribe.
Taking a look at your financial indicators, the rand is trading at 18 rand 46 to the US dollar, 23 rand 62 to the pound, 19 rand 62 to the euro. Gold is trading at $2,912.34 a fine ounce. Brent crude oil is at $70.79 a barrel. A cloudy morning becoming fine afternoon is forecast in Gauteng. Johannesburg temperatures are at 19 and 30 degrees, 18 and 28 in Pretoria, 17 and 27 in Vereeniging. Recapping the top story in Power News this hour. President Cyril Ramaphosa will deliver the opening remarks during his meeting with the Provincial Executive Committee and the leadership of the Johannesburg Metro Council this morning.
In power traffic, we start off in Rivonia. If you are traveling on Rivonia Road southbound, you can expect a lot of pressure as you're headed towards the Calvin Drive intersection. I'm also seeing delays that are approaching Calvin Drive as you are traveling on Summit Road southbound. Ballyclare as well as the Bryanston Drive routes are backed up as you're traveling eastbound, approaching the Coleraine Drive intersection. If you're traveling on Santon Drive eastbound, you can expect some heavy congestion with delays between Winnie Mandela Drive and the Santon City Shopping Centre.
Power News. On FM, online, and DSTV channel 889. This is Power 98.7.
Power Breakfast is proudly brought to you by Telkom Business. Possible begins here. And now, you're listening to Power Breakfast with Tessa Dooms. Weekdays, 6 to 9 a.m. Taking your calls on 0861 987 000.
Good morning, Tessa Dooms. Good morning to BBK, Pokela, and everyone in the studio. So the president is visiting his province. This guy has got 2 houses in Gauteng, I think. The ones that are just like publicly known. Agri has a house in Pretoria, Masambandlo Presidential House in Pretoria, Union Buildings. And he has got a house in Houghton. So why is he what's happening? Mara, what is wrong? South Africans, let's wake up. What is this?
The time is now 8:11. Hashtag cancel that thing. This is Power Breakfast, and we are in the third hour of the show. In a few minutes' time, we're going to be talking to the DAMP, who's going to be telling us about the state of the deal around the budget in the GNU, saying that maybe the DA is not ready to say there is a deal yet. But before that, I wanted to reflect on some of the comments that we've been getting on Twitter. We haven't had actually Twitter comments this week. So Slagovic SA says that the priorities the president should focus on and Premier Sufi should focus on is number one, unfreezing of post and job creation, eradication of poverty, clear strategy for combating rampant crime, cutting distribution lines of drugs, and funding local businesses. And then we also have a comment from Makumalo, who says that the local government election is next year and you need to decide what type of government you want. You are the voters. And this was in response to a conversation we started at the beginning of the show where we said our parliamentarians, our MPs, our members of provincial legislations and our councillors are people that we vote for, and we should demand more of them. And so I was asking you to kind of comment on what do we want from our MPs, our members of provincial legislations and our councillors as we go forward into the local government elections next year, because those are people that we vote for too. And then we have a call here from Becky in Roodepoort. And Becky wanted to make a comment on the conversation that we had about tech, about us being consumers. Becky, welcome to Power Breakfast.
Good morning, Tessa. Good morning, Pukela and BBK.
We are top, and we are hoping you're top as well.
You know, Tessa, the question you asked the tech analyst was profound. Are we active participants in these new technologies, or we are waiting to be consumers?
Yeah, and very often we feel like we're being consumers because our industry is not very loud about the ways that we participate in these things. What concerns you about the idea that we are waiting to be consumers?
No, you know, Tessa, someone right now is waiting for iPhone 17, you know, and we never talk about our own technology center of excellence. You know, I think we need to extend this question that you asked the tech analyst to political principles involved in technologies, as well as basic education and higher education.
100%.
So that we can make sure that we are not active or rather consumers, rather we are active participants in the new technology.
And I mean, you make such a good point about it as well, because in other areas, thinking about the U.S. economy, that's a big consumer economy. In other areas of their markets, they had just resigned themselves to being customers of cars, of food, and of all of those things. And in the one area, actually two areas, they took Hollywood and the arts very seriously as producers, and now tech. You can see how bullish they're becoming in the tech sector in terms of governing and running the systems, and I think we should be too. Rwanda did the same thing a few years ago, where it started focusing on producing a local phone and really started thinking about the value chain themselves. And like I said earlier, the CSIR is actually an innovation hub. It is actually a place where new things are being tested, where research is being done, and we're not really hearing much about what's happening with those banks of research that we are pouring money into. When you hear that budget next week, the Department of Science and Technology, the Department of Communications and Innovation, all of that money is also going into research, and we're not seeing the dividends. So I think, Becky, you're 100% right. We need to ask the decision makers, why are we not seeing ourselves more at the forefront of those conversations?
And lastly, Tessa, we need to see these products on the shelves. We must not be told that, it's still a prototype, South African prototype. We are still developing it. It must be on the shelves, and it must have free advertisement.
No, absolutely, Becky.
Free advertisement.
And this reminds me actually of the case of South Korea. South Korea, a few years ago, made a decision that it was going to start producing its own cars. And then they said to the public, they said to the citizens, you are going to have to stop buying those big German sedans and start buying the cars being produced here, even if they're not at the same standard for the first few years, because we're only going to get to the right standards if we invest in ourselves and are willing to buy our own things, even if they're not perfect yet. And maybe we must also ask ourselves, are we willing to make the sacrifices in order to get into the game properly? Thank you for raising that with us, Becky.
Thank you. We must be a self-sustaining economy. Good morning.
100%.
Thank you so much, Tessa.
All you need to know to start your day. Power Breakfast on Power 98.7.
The time is 8:17 and you're on Power Breakfast. We have our last big conversation of the day, and this is a reflection on the budget 2025. In the second hour of the day, we spoke to Musi Maimane, who is the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriations that looks after the budget or receives the budget from Cabinet when it comes into Parliament. And he had some really interesting insights into why it's important for the timeline to be kept from the side of Cabinet presenting this budget proposal. And yesterday we heard Cabinet starting to suggest that they think they've landed the plane in terms of a GNU agreement and that the 12th of March is not under threat. But then we heard somebody from within Cabinet in his role as the head of the DA, John Steenhuisen, say to us, there is no agreement yet, and cautioning us on thinking that the agreement has been struck. So we wanted to follow up on this because, as Musi said earlier, there are repercussions there that can come down the line if we don't have these budgets tabled in time, if we miss some of the deadlines. And so we wanted to do a deep dive into that story. So with us for this conversation is Dr. Mark Beuk, and he is the DA Finance spokesperson and a member of Parliament. Thank you so much, Mark, for joining us this morning. Tell us a bit about whether we were reading the DA stance correctly on this, where John Steenhuisen is saying that there is no deal yet.
Good to be with you. There's a couple of things to consider here. The message from Cabinet didn't quite say that a deal has been reached. As I read it, it said that the input process has been concluded. Of course, Cabinet is chaired by the President, and it's a confidential forum of which I'm not a part, and even if I was a part, I wouldn't be able to speak about it because of its nature of confidentiality. And then there's a spokesperson for Cabinet also appointed by the ANC. So I would add that we should probably consider where the message is coming from when we consider it.
Sure.
The fact of the matter is this. The ANC needs the DA's support to get the budget across the line. And those conversations outside of a Cabinet forum between the two parties are ongoing. And the DA has been quite firm that if the proposal that comes out from the Minister of Finance is an increase in VAT or another form of taxation, we will be opposed to it.
So, Mark, is this you saying that you give no merit to, earlier in the week, we ran a story that the ANC was speaking about the EFF as a possible partner in this, because ultimately it is going to be Parliament that's going to pass this. So it doesn't have to be a GNU partner that agrees. And the math of the GNU does say that in Parliament seats, is the DA really crucial? Because if the EFF or the MK party or any other party in Parliament actually came to the table, surely this could be passed without the DA.
Well, there are a couple of points that you're raising in there. Perhaps the most prominent one is this. If the ANC was so desperate as to approach a party outside of the GNU to get its budget passed, that should tell you something about the interest that they're trying to protect, because it wouldn't be the interest of South Africans to tax them more. But I would also point out that, again, we're venturing into the hypothetical realm. But if they were to do that, then the EFF would have to go convince its voters that they are acting in their interest by passing this budget, which will tax their voters more. And the EFF, at least on paper, has always claimed that they are pro-poor.
Sure.
So it's simply inconceivable. And I'll also then point out that, despite this reckless threat from the ANC to go approach a partner outside of the GNU, the EFF itself has indicated it's interested in no such deal.
Sure. And I mean, Mark, that does bring us to the substance of the DA's rejection of this bill or of the proposal. So the VAT and the 2% VAT is definitely one part of the conversation. But in a statement that was either released or leaked or something from the DA, there were sentiments also around cutting back and some cutting back measures across different departments as the way to go forward. And I think that civil society organizations that have been critical of austerity and saying that this particular administration and even the one before was too eager to cut back on spending. Are you proposing a cutback on spending, and how does that measure up with this idea that we're trying to protect the poor? Because on the one hand, the VAT will affect the poor as well, but surely cutbacks in critical social spending areas particularly will also have a negative impact on poor people.
The war effort in the DRC is going to cost us 1.6 billion rand this year alone and 5 billion rand over the next 3 years. If somebody can explain to me how that endeavor, costing us that much, is serving anybody in South Africa, then perhaps there's a conversation. But until they are able to do that, it's just one of many examples that everybody, and I suspect all of your listeners too, know already, which is the government is so corrupt and it's become so entrenched in its maladministration over decades of ANC rule that the problem is not spending on things that we need, such as teachers and nurses and doctors. And we've been quite clear we're opposed to any cutbacks in critical expenditure as well as social expenditure. What we have been advocating is cutting all of the fat, slaughtering some of these ANC holy cows. I can give you another example. There are these CETAs, which are meant to be these training authorities. It's 19 billion rand that it's costing our fiscus, and they are corrupt. They are the subject of multiple SIU investigations, and they can't produce a clean audit. So when the DA talks about an efficient government, what we are saying is let's get away from the senseless expenditure and let's double down on the things that we do need, the critical services. Sure. And we simply do not align with the ANC lie that you either punish South Africans with a VAT hike or you punish South Africans with an austerity budget. There's a third way, which is focused on efficiency, and it starts undermining all of these networks.
So, Mark, circling back to a conversation we've been having on the show all morning, what is the danger of allowing a budget that everybody in the GNU doesn't necessarily agree on, but taking it into the parliamentary space and let the parliamentary debate process, iron these things out? Why is the DA not using its muscle, or why is it not thinking about using its muscle at that next phase to actually debate this in Parliament, in a public forum? Because right now, these conversations are happening behind the scenes, right? They're happening behind closed doors. Like you say, Cabinet is a closed meeting. It is confidential. But Parliament is not. And wouldn't it benefit the public to hear these debates happening, to hear what it is the DA is actually trying to get through in the debate forum that Parliament actually is, so that we are also in the know in this conversation?
I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's good for democracy. It's good for transparency, for this budget to move to the next stage, and for Parliament to function the way it was meant to function, which is parties coming together and supporting the budget or not support it. I think it's a very healthy development that South Africa doesn't have one-party majority rule anymore, and parties now need to find each other and work together. And so, I think the difficulty with the failed February budget was that it was presented to Cabinet a couple of hours before it was presented to Parliament, and it's a result of 30 years of ANC majority rule, where they arrogantly thought that they had the right to go ahead, give Treasury instruction, not consult with its partners, and then just rubber stamp it through Parliament, as has always happened in the past.
So is the DA willing to then not necessarily have an agreement at the proposal phase, but go through the process, even if they haven't had agreement now, and not hold it back further, so that what Musi Maimane says might be a chaos situation can be avoided if we're missing the timelines? Can the DA allow for this to go through without it having full approval and full agreement at the cabinet level?
Sorry, that was a fairly long question. You just remind me of the crux again.
The crux is, will the DA allow it to go to the next phase, even if there's not agreement at the GNU table in cabinet?
Right. The DA wants a unified budget presented on the 12th of March. If the ANC goes ahead and it does as it's always done, and it weaponizes time and it engages in brinkmanship, then Parliament must follow its course. We've got the next couple of months. It would have taken a few months anyway to pass the bills associated with the budget. And we will use our seats in Parliament and our position there to enforce what Parliament was meant to do, which is hold the executive accountable, including when they're making bad decisions that punishes South Africans, such as any VAT increase that's been proposed to date.
So Parliament will get to do its job.
So the answer to your question is absolutely, we support Parliament doing its job.
Great stuff.
We also hope that the ANC will listen and they'll put forward a budget that focuses on growth and the economy and efficiency in our spending. And when they've done that, then they'll have our support in Parliament.
Thank you so much. That's Dr. Mark Björk. He's the DA Finance spokesperson and MP in Parliament.
Power traffic.
Thanks, Tessa. A very good morning to you. We start off in Clayville. If you're traveling on the R21 southbound, you can expect a queue for about 15 minutes from Olifantsfontein Road. Those delays are clear just before you get to the R25 Babsfontein Road exit due to roadworks that are happening on the R21 south. If you're traveling on the N3 south, you can also expect delays between Linksfield Road and the Van Buren Road exit. The N12 and the R24 westbound are both very slow approaching the N3 via Glulis. If you're traveling on Athol Oaklands Road northbound in Melrose, those delays can be expected from the M1 highway interchange as you are headed towards the Central Avenue intersection via Cross Avenue. If you're traveling on Corlett Drive westbound, a heavy congestion from the M1 can be expected as well as you're headed towards the Wanderers Cricket Stadium. If you are traveling on Jan Smuts Avenue southbound, that's in Legari, there's some queuing traffic approaching Conrad Drive. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebogang Pukela.
Power traffic. Power markets.
So now the time is 8:28, and we're going to be talking about some big stories in the markets. We have Ulebogang Mpelela, the equity trader at FNB, to take us through a few of the stories. Ule, Spur is expanding while others are worried that consumers don't have enough money to spend. Tell us a little bit more about how they're getting that right.
Yes, Tessa. So we saw Spur Corporation has announced plans for significant store expansions following a profit rise. So the company reported a near 12% increase in half-year headline earnings per share. And we see that it plans to open up 47 new restaurants in South Africa, 13 internationally in the 2025 financial year. So the group also saw a 10% increase in total restaurant sales for the 6 months ending December 2024, and its revenue grew by 13.8% to 2 billion. And this was driven by increased restaurant sales and contributions from the Doppio collection. The board declared a dividend of 106 cents per share, an increase of 11.6%, rise from the previous year, which is also a thumbs up for investors. The group's focus on its value proposition by continuing to focus on attracting customers into restaurants, and it also enjoys the support from its loyal customers through the Family Club Loyalty Program, which is a significant representation of its group's turnover. So these expansions and financial gains reflect Spur's strategic focus on its growth and market presence.
Great stuff. And we're also seeing the financial sector is rallying as well. So you have Quilter that's boosted by new business levels, higher business levels, and Old Mutual earnings also going up. Those are related companies, as I understand it. Why is the financial sector on such a high at the moment?
Yes, so when we look at Quilter that reported strong financial results, these were driven by higher new business levels. So when we look at its profits, it increased by 17% to £196 million, with 2% points improvement in operating margin to 29%. And its assets under administration grew by 12% Revenues rose by 7% to 670 million pounds. This was driven by higher management fees and increased investment revenue. Cost controls were kept under control, rising just 3%. The company also raised its dividend by 13% to 5.9 pence per share. So its core business showed an increase of 5.2 billion, and this was an increase of 525%. We saw that this reflected an improvement in the macro environment and investor sentiment, and its effectiveness of building out distribution and enhancing proposition. So these also showed its strong revenue momentum as well as its effective cost management.
Sure.
And on to Old Mutual. Yes, you are
Just in
right.
30 seconds for us.
Okay. So Old Mutual also boosted its strong performance from revenue. So these are linked, and we saw that they reflected good margins.
Can you end us with our indicators quickly?
Okay, so looking at a few commodities, gold was weaker at $2,917 per ounce, while platinum was stronger at $966 per ounce. Brent crude was slightly weaker and was trading at around $69 per barrel at the close. The rand was slightly mixed against major currencies, strong against the dollar at around 18.35 rand against the dollar. The rand was trading weaker at 19.75 against the euro, and slightly stronger at 23.62 to the pound.
Thank you so much. That was Ule Mapalele, equity trader at FNB. For a full wrap of our market update, there's Power Business tonight with Nosipo Kharebe at 6 p.m. Now for the news.
Thanks, Tessa. Good morning. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa will march to the Tshwane Mayor's office this morning. They're handing over a memorandum of demands against the city for failing to pay retrenchment packages to employees of the bus operator at Tshwane Affected Operations Investment. Now, the Tshwane Affected Operations Investment was one of the companies contracted to the Tshwane Rapid Transport Services, also known as Arieng. According to NUMSA, the city terminated the contract in December last year and promised to absorb all affected workers into various parts of its operations. However, NUMSA spokesperson Pagamile Hlubi Majola says this has negatively impacted some 261 workers.
Our members are deeply frustrated because they've not received a cent for their retrenchment packages. They are unable to feed themselves or take care of their families. At the same time, they are suffering after being promised employment by the city. It is shameful that the city of Tshwane treats workers like this, which is why our members will be marching to hand over a memorandum of demands to the mayor.
And the African Transformation Movement is calling for the Independent Police Investigative Directorate report on the Phalaphala matter to be made public. It follows growing concern over the secrecy surrounding the issue, especially after Police Minister Senzo Mchunu declared the report top secret. The party argues that this decision violates transparency and is a deliberate attempt to shield President Ramaphosa and his administration from much-needed scrutiny. Here's the ATM's Zaman Chona.
Mr. Mchunu's assertion that he cannot reveal the contents of this report is a disingenuous attempt to appease his employer, the president, rather than to serve the interest of the South African public. The fact that state personnel and resources were allegedly mobilized to chase after stolen dollars from the president's farm raises serious questions about the misuse of state resources for personal gain.
More on these and other power stories at 9 o'clock.
In power traffic, we start off in Johannesburg North. If you're traveling on Witkoppen Road, you can expect delays that are in both directions as you're approaching the Market Street intersection. Eastbound delays are just under 10 minutes from Hyperion. As you're traveling westbound, you'll bump into that pressure shortly after you pass the Douglas Drive intersection. If you're traveling on Rivonia Road southbound, as you're traveling out of Rivonia, there's queuing traffic to expect between 12th Avenue and the Calvin Drive intersection. Greyston Drive westbound is heavy as you're headed towards the Sandton CBD. You can also expect delays as you're traveling towards Sandton on Athol Oaklands Road northbound between the M1 and Central Avenue.
Power Sports.
And in your weather, Johannesburg starts off with 18 with a high of 30. Vereniging 17, a high of 28. Soweto starting at 19 with a high of 29. Kempton Park 19 to a high of 29. Pretoria 18 with a scorcher of 31. Centurion 19 ending at 30. And Randfontein 17 with a high of 28.
Power Sports.
What's happening with the Springboks? I'm so excited about August.
Let's go up and under with the oval-shaped ball then, Miss T, and the world champions, a.k.a. the Springboks, or as Lebza calls them, Sia and the gang, will add 2 more tests to their 2025 calendar, which will also include a clash against the Barbarians on June 28th.
I cannot wait, guys. 16th of August, guys. My favorite day of the year now.
Definitely. And this after the Bok coach Rassie Erasmus requested 15 fixtures to help him assess the players 2 years out from the Rugby World Cup, which will be in Australia in 2027. South Africa will also play New Zealand and Australia. This is in the Rugby Championship, as well as other fixtures against France and Ireland in November. Say your say, Rassie.
It is a big group, and to manage that group and to get allowed to have such a big group of players, you have to have close dealings with the franchise CEOs and obviously with the office. So yeah, we're hoping we're getting 15 matches. I think we almost confirmed every single one. Not maybe the venues, but yes, we do have a really tough season. You can just go and look at our draw. It's one of, I think, 2022 was really tough, but now having 15 matches, I would think it's only the second time in history that we've played 15. I think in 2007 there were 17 matches. So yeah, it will be the first time in a long time, and I think we need that because we still want to filter and sift some players and give a lot of players opportunity whilst winning.
And as Buhlungu azipheli ngoba mina nawe and the rest of the Proteas will be watching New Zealand meeting India in the final of the ICC Champions Trophy. This after the Black Caps eliminated our Proteas yesterday's semi-final with a 50-run victory, and this is now becoming a habit, because South Africa have lost Champions Trophy semi-finals in 2000, 2002, 2006, 2013, as well as this year. And the Proteas also lost in the semi-finals of the 2023 ODI World Cup and in the final last year's T20 World Cup. What does Coach Rob Walter have to say about all of this?
I mean, it's just plain to see there was a pretty good batting wicket. I don't think you can score 360 if it's not a good batting wicket. And yeah, so through no lack of effort, I don't think. I mean, we'd spoken about our options if it was a good wicket, which we knew it would be. And whilst, yes, we could bemoan our execution a little bit, certainly we'll never question the effort of the guys. And we sort of threw whatever we could at them, but unfortunately, we couldn't break that partnership, which really set them up to push towards the end.
And in news from between the 4 white lines of the football pitch in the Betway Premiership, Ucaba Nokutumela helped Richards Bay to come from a 2-1 victory behind Sikukune United in Umlazi eThekwini, and Usibisi scored as Orlando Pirates defeated Chippa United 1-0. This was at Gqeberha eBhayi. No goals between SuperSport United and Amazulu City and Galaxy in a 1-1 deadlock. And as we move on to the Champions League, PSG were all over Liverpool like a rash, but failed to capitalize on their dominance, leaving the Paris side to pay the price when they fell to a late goal by substitute Harvey Elliott, as the Reds completed one of the biggest smash and grabs in Champions League history. PSG completely dominated the game with 27 shots, forcing Liverpool goalkeeper Alisson to pull off some stunning saves, and PSG coach Luis Enrique says they faced a best Liverpool side.
We've managed to play against one of the best teams in Europe. We defended very well, we took some risks, but clearly we deserve a different result. Football, this is football. It's a sport that could be unfair sometimes, and you have to accept that. That's how it works. And play the same way we played today. We played the first match, we have nothing to lose.
And finally, from tennis now, Petra Kvitova lost 6-4, 3-6 and 4-6 to Frances Vara Krasheva at the BNP Paribas Open in Indian Wells. Kvitova ran out of steam in a seesaw battle which lasted 2 hours and 23 minutes, and Krasheva, who now faces fast-rising Russian Mira Andreeva in the second round, fought back after losing the opening set 6-4, decisively breaking Kvitova to lead 4-2 in the second round before leveling the match. And that brings us to the end of our Sports on Power Breakfast. For Power Sport, I am BBK.
Power Sports.
Midnight Oil has a very distinct smell for business owners. Those who know will say it's got grit and graft. That's why Telkom Business wants to unleash the hero in you with the Business Fusion deal. Get a Packard Bell Montenero laptop, LTE 120 gigs anytime data, 120 gigs night surfer data, Smart Voice Basic, plus a professional website for only 749 Rand per month. Call 10213, click telkom.co.za or go to any Telkom shop. TNC apply. Telkom. Possible begins here.
Running a business is tough, but managing HR, payroll, and legal challenges shouldn't be. With Old Mutual SME Go, you can simplify employee attendance and leave tracking in a few clicks. Our SARS-compliant automated payroll calculates employee hours and issues accurate payslips, ensuring prompt payments. And when legal issues arise, get support without hefty fees. Plus, the tap-to-pay functionality transforms your NFC-enabled Android device into a full POS for contactless payments at low fixed fees. Get the SME Go Premium Bundle for only 999 Rand. Visit smego.co.za or download from Google Play or the App Store. T's and C's apply. Old Mutual SME Go, proud sponsor of Power Suit. Thursdays from 7:35 to 8 p.m.
We can't make you a morning person.
Good morning to you, Power family. Good morning.
But we can surely make your weekend mornings. Everything you need to make your weekend mornings better.
Are you this morning? I hope you're doing well. I hope you had a fabulous week.
Power Weekend Breakfast with Siraj Maahi. A little bit of this, that, and everything you need to start your weekend.
It's also important to differentiate between a need and a want. A luxury.
But what if I need what I want?
Saturdays 6 to 10 a.m. and Sundays 6 to 9 a.m. on Power 98.7.
We are members of the Weekend Breakfast Church, hence we don't go to other churches.
Now we're talking.
Send us your voice notes on 083-303-7093.
Morning, Power Breakfast team. The president must not go to those three cities. I believe he already knows the state of those cities. He must go to the municipalities to hold them to account and see why those services are not being rendered and see if there are any bottlenecks. What I can tell you is that the triple PFMA will come up as a problem. MMC Mginichwa clearly elaborated it yesterday on Power Drive. It can't take so long to procure simple things. It can't take so long to fix a portal. Tower here from Dawsonville.
Hi, Tessa, Malesala in Pretoria. Look, I mean, to maintain the infrastructure, whether it's road, electricity, sewage pipes in a municipality, you need to capacitate the municipal workforce to do that work. It's a day-to-day work that when people wake up and go to work in the municipality, they should have a schedule on which road need what kind of maintenance when, and just covering potholes is not road maintenance. Potholes is just a temporary fix when you are planning to do a permanent fix on the road. Thank you.
Hello, Tessa. This is Tabo from Pretoria. Please tell your guest there that he should not be patronizing us. He must not patronize us. There is no EFF that is going to vote for a 2% VAT increase. And as well, it is their policies, the policies that were advanced by them and the ANC that have actually gotten us to this mess. It is through the policies that are advanced by the EFF that we will see even tax going below 14%. And we want those policies to be advanced, whether by them as the GNU, to see to it that jobs are created in South Africa and people have money in their pocket to go by. Thank you.
The time now is 8:45 as we land the Power Breakfast plane for the day. We're going to be reading some of your tweets as well. So we have Zolani on Twitter. Zolani is one of my faves on Twitter because he's always talking about local government. So it's your day to shine today, Zolani. And Zolani says, Pukela's jab around cancelling this thing was a funny one. And that if there's one thing the president must answer is how much is being invested in the city of Joburg for implementation of the district development model, the BBM, and where the pilot sites are and if they are being funded and supported, because talk is cheap, investment is expensive. And I think that there's been a few, in the voice notes, there's been a thread around the capacity of the state to deliver. And I think the municipalities, seeing a pothole, the president seeing a pothole is great. But knowing whether or not the city of Joburg can actually use the money that it gets is more important. The president has these investment summits and where. If that investment comes and it lands, but it doesn't get spent properly, what is the point? I was saying to somebody yesterday, if one thing I would do is I would take the president down to, where Joburg Theatre is. There's a big...
That's new. That's Bromfontein. They're by city council.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, the big city council building, that... it's like a glass building, like a bluish glass building. Do you know that building has been empty for years?
Are you serious?
It's derelict. So the offices are empty. There's nobody inside. Nobody. Nobody's inside there. Our archives are sitting inside that building, and they're telling us it's going to take 2.5 billion to refurbish that building alone. Now, if your own house is in a state of disrepair, as the municipality, what does that say about Joburg property and your ability to deal with the hijacked buildings and where? Really, the question is, can the municipalities be good stewards of our money and actually spend the money properly?
But we also have to take it back to, are there people, we need to also have the city come out and say that, what is the percentage of the people that are paying rates and taxes to the city of Johannesburg? Because we know that when there's a disorganized council, for example, the city is just disorganized, people take advantage of that, and they also run away from paying the municipal bills, which in turn doesn't allow the city to do all the things that the city needs to do with the money, because people are just using the fact that they've just been incompetent to not pay their rates.
But even those people who are paying will be telling you stories for days, brother, that you pay. You don't get the service you pay for. An example, a neighbor in my street, there's a big tree outside the gate. There is a municipality staff, right, on the roadside. She has been calling for weeks, for months. It's 6 months now for them to come and cut the tree. You know what? They have never come. The only time they came was when there was that storm in December a couple of years back. Some trees fell off and stuff, so they were blocking the roads. They came to remove the stump on the road. And if you get somebody to come and cut the tree for you, do you know how much they'll charge you?
How much?
60,000 K.
My goodness.
But they cannot come and do it when you've been calling them for almost
100%.
half a year.
And that's why it's called a collection, right? It doesn't actually matter if you are the only person that's paying for it, that's paying the city. If everyone else in the street is not paying for the city, your money is not going to be making a difference.
But I'm going to be devil's advocate on this on one way, Debs. In the most unequal country in the world, we have to actually ask if the way that we have structured our municipalities as a user pay principle is the most effective way to get the work done, right?
Yeah.
Because we have 40% unemployment. You're asking 40% of people in this country who are adults and contributing to have the money to be able to pay for basic services. Now, yes, we want people to contribute and solidarity of a big pot here, but we also have to think about what happens in a case where a city that is much poorer, much more resource poor than ours, has more people who are unemployed, poor, cannot actually make those contributions. That means that they need the resources more. They need the services more, but they don't have payment. I think there's also something fundamentally we have to ask about whether this kind of system that we're using for our municipalities is fit for purpose for a country that's in the state that we are in at the moment. And then the question about capacity. Because again, we can give them all the money in the world, but if they don't use it properly. And that was what came up with our interview with Pagamile on on the NUMSA strike. And we have a Twitter comment here from Mokhorosi, who says that Sispagamile made clear to us something that we were really confused about. Some of us are lost on what was going on because there's a lot of fake news out of there. But this is in response to that conversation about the fact that the employees are striking because you have a city that has not actually, Tshwane City has not actually been a good steward here. Laid people off, made promises that it can't deliver on, is outsourcing when it should be insourcing, all of those things. The capacity of these municipalities is as big a question as the revenue collection issues that it has.
Exactly.
So I wanted to just use the last few minutes of today to thank our international listeners of Power Breakfast. And it's come to my attention in the last few days that we have quite a few international listeners. Mercy on Twitter is one of them. And so Mercy says to us, great show, guys. Watching all the way from Nairobi. I hope that watching also means that the live stream that we've been doing in the last 2 days has been watched. The link has been put onto our social media. But this is all the way from Kenya, Nairobi.
International, baby.
We're international, baby. We really are.
Harambe.
Yesterday, I was told that somebody from London was listening to our podcast last night and giving me some feedback on that. And then we have people who are listening from the USA. And I actually became aware that when we are broadcasting here, it's late night for the USA.
Exactly,
So
yeah.
some people in the USA are using this as their late night show.
At the late night talk show.
Their late night talk show.
And there's also some exciting stuff talking about being international happening next week. I know that you're going to be out there taking Power Breakfast internationally.
I am, but I'm going to leave that announcement for tomorrow. So stay tuned for tomorrow. We've got a very, very big announcement about Power FM going to the international streets of the world. Power Breakfast takes it international. But we are really just appreciative of every one of you who've been sending in your thoughts, your comments, your tweets. We've seen them, guys. We don't necessarily have the manpower yet to respond to all of them, but we hear you and we see you. And like we say at the beginning of every Power Breakfast show, your voice matters in these conversations with us. Today, we've had this rally of callers responding to our call around the question about MPs. We've had these voice notes coming in, and particularly as we talk tomorrow, and I want to throw forward to tomorrow where we're going to do a bit of an analysis of the president's visit. One of our Twitter callers actually, or our tweeters, was rapping us over the knuckle lips, saying that we're being a bit naughty calling it a visit, that they didn't call it a visit. They're just saying that the president is coming to do oversight. It's not a visit. But, you know,
So it's not an official
semantics. But I do want us tomorrow to do a little bit of looking into how is this visit unfolding, what is the point of it. I know the president's meeting with some civil society groups, he's meeting with the municipality itself, and I saw there is a presentation that will be made about the finances of the city of Tshwane and the city of Joburg, to the point that you made earlier. And it would seem at first glance that the city of Tshwane's finances are in a better position than the city of Joburg's. And if there's one place where the administrative power of the Gauteng province and national comes in, is when the finances go derelict. In fact, constitutionally, that's one of the strongest ways that a province or the national department can come in and do something about the state of a city, is when the finances fall apart. So I do think that question about the investment and all of that Zolani is raising is going to be one of the important ones that we're going to have to look at in the next few days. It doesn't really matter if you just see a pothole being closed. This is about managing a city, a very big city that needs roads that are safe and smooth and can be driven on, as you give us the final traffic update of the day.
Power traffic.
Thanks, Tessa. Very good morning to you. Let's check out what's happening in your roads. N3 South is still backed up between Linksfield Road and the Van Buren Road exit. The N12 and the R24 westbound also experiencing delays as you're headed towards joining the N3 via the Glulis interchange. If you're traveling on the R21 northbound, southbound rather, there are roadworks that are on the go just before the Babsfontein Road exit, and those are causing delays from the Olifantsfontein Road exit. M1 southbound still backed up approaching the Marlborough Drive exit from the Buccleuch interchange. You can also expect queuing traffic as you're traveling on Arthur Oaklands Road northbound as you're from the M1 heading towards Central Avenue via Cross Street. Queuing traffic can also be expected on Winnie Mandela Drive southbound in Bryanston as you're traveling past Ballyclare heading towards the Republic Road intersection. You can also expect delays in Johannesburg North on Witkoppen Road eastbound. That pressure is from Malibongwe Drive and is clearing just after Church Street. And remember, if you come across any further traffic incidents, tweet at Power987 Traffic. For Power Traffic, I'm Lebohang Phokela.
Power Traffic.
Midnight Oil has a very distinct smell for business owners. Those who know will say it's got grit and graft. That's why Telkom Business wants to unleash the hero in you with the Business Fusion deal. Get a Packard Bell Montenero laptop, LTE 120 gigs anytime data, 120 gigs night surfer data, Smart Voice Basic, plus a professional website for only 749 Rand per month. Call 10213, click telkom.co.za or go to any Telkom shop. TNC apply. Telkom. Possible begins here.
There's a new brand in the Hatfield Motor Group. MG has arrived in South Africa, and Hatfield has dealers in Rivonia, Midrand, and Hatfield. Come test drive the all-new MG lineup, introducing the stylish ZS and HS SUVs and the all-electric MG Cyberster. Is your heart skipping a beat yet? Come find your MG heartbeat. Unbeatable value and great deals at MG Rivonia, MG Midrand, and MG Hatfield. Hatfieldgroup.co.za. Rated #1 in service.
In response to the current unstable economic conditions, the Unemployment Insurance Fund, that's the UIF, an entity of the Department of Employment and Labour, has allocated 2.4 billion rand in budget for the temporary employer-employee relief scheme known as TERS to assist businesses in distress. TERS is an intervention by the Department of Employment and Labour that provides financial assistance to companies for a period of up to 12 months. The scheme enables employers to retain employees by covering their salaries while the company focuses on implementing a turnaround strategy to remain operational. For more information on TERS and how to apply, please visit www.ccma.org.za/temporary-employer-employee-relief-scheme/ UIF, working for you.
Power 98.7 weekends. All your favorite hit music all day long. The best of the 80s, 90s, and now.
I know you wanna be the main one.
If it isn't a hit, we don't play it. This is what our weekends are made of. Power 98.7. Now we're talking.
Connect with Tessa on X at Tessa_Dooms.
The time is now 8:58, and we end off Power Breakfast this morning with 2 tweets from Kingmaker. Kingmaker says, Tessa Dooms, good point. The DA must stop thinking they are indispensable. And this is related to a conversation we had earlier with DA MP Mark Burker, who was saying that the DA will allow the parliamentary process to go forward with the budget, to not hold it up too much. And also Kingmaker saying, ultimately, all members of parliament will have a say. He also says that DA leaders are absolutely freaked out by the possibility of the ANC approaching the EFF, which is a nice segue into our next hour of Power FM as we get the good doctor joining us. The People's Bay, Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, is going to be next on our airwaves. It's been a good morning with you on Power Breakfast. We are really, really glad to hear more of your voices. It is love and revolution that we are pursuing on Power FM. So please join us tomorrow morning again, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. as we have all of the topics of the day, as we have good conversations that power up the nation. Next up, we are ready to get into our news as we say, power to the people. If we're ready for it, Nompumelelo Ngumeni has got our news at the top of the hour. Power FM is with you today.
Power Breakfast was proudly brought to you by Telkom Business. Possible begins here.
Power News.
The top story is NUMSA to march to Tshwane Mayor's office over unpaid retrenchment packages and yellow level 2 warning for severe thunderstorms.